It's time for TWiT This Week in Tech. Daniel Rubino's here from Windows Central, Dan Patterson from Blackbird.ai, and Patrick Beja from France. We will talk about Xbox gaming, Microsoft's secret strategy, why Meta changed their name, and why they're offering hundreds of millions of dollars to AI researchers, and what the big, beautiful bill could mean for your Wi-Fi. All that and more coming up next on TWiT.
Podcasts you love
from people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is TWiT, This Week at Tech, episode 1038, recorded Sunday, June 29th, 2025. Wu Wei meets Wu Tang. It's time for TWiT This Week at Tech, the show where we cover the week's tech news with all my favorite people. I realized I was thinking this today. I feel like every Sunday I'm going to a party, and we're a cocktail party with really smart people, and we're going to hang out. We're going to talk about interesting stuff. And so, thank you, Benito, for putting together a wonderful panel for our cocktail party today. Daniel Rubino is here, editor-in-chief of Windows Central. I almost said magazine.
No, we were never a magazine.
Never a magazine.
Some of the other future sites have been magazines, but
you were smart not to be a magazine.
It's true.
Yeah,
yes.
Windows Central. That's all it needs to be. The central place for Windows. Great to see you, Daniel. Also here from France. And it's not because he's a conehead. It's not Patrick.com, who is staying up late.
From France?
He's actually, It's already Monday in France.
It is almost. I still have 44 minutes until it's Monday. And I'm melting already.
Thank goodness.
My computer is heating. It's just, it's getting all the heat under the desk and it's rising up. I don't know if I'm going to make it to the end of the show, but I'm going to do my best, Leo. I'm going to try.
Just, I'll blow on you. Try to cool it off. Also wonderful to have Dan Patterson here from Blackbird AI. He's director of content there, longtime journalist for CBS and elsewhere, now doing content for a very interesting site that is it's not an AI site exactly, or is it?
Well, we use AI, but we also use humans. We call them narrative attacks because it's like a cyber attack. But the use of deepfakes or misinformation or disinformation to attack like a cyber attack would. So
I guess you'd have to use AI to kind of it takes an AI to find an AI, I guess. Yeah,
and we have some, anyone can use it. I always say I don't want to log roll just for our products, but you can use it just to vet it yourself.
I have already signed in. Yeah, it's free for individual use or...
Yeah. It's compass.blackbird.ai. And it will check. It's, I don't want to call it a fact checker. It's not a fact checker. It provides context. So anything you see that you have a question about, any link, any claim, if you hear somebody say the sky is green, just check it in Compass. It's a pretty useful tool.
So smart.
Yeah.
So smart.
And humans, the Blackbird blog, you can read what we do. It's humans. Humans and AI.
It's made of humans.
Yes.
I love it. Yeah, Blackbird blog is called The Raven. I love it. That's only one kind of Blackbird. There's also the Maltese Falcon, I believe. All right. I don't know where we should start. I was going to start with politics, but then I thought, blood pressure. So let's start with the Xbox. We actually, before the show, I wasn't planning this, but we started having a very interesting conversation about Xbox Game Pass and what Microsoft has done with their game business. And Patrick, do you still work in the gaming business?
No, I left Blizzard Entertainment, which is now a Microsoft company. I left them over 10 years ago to launch into this wonderful career of being a podcaster.
Congrats. Really? You're full time. Very nice.
Yeah, I've been for 11 years now. Yeah. And it's working out great.
It's amazing.
But yeah, I follow the gaming industry very, very closely, and I do shows about the gaming industry. And of course, it's a passion of mine. And the really interesting thing that's happening with Microsoft and the Xbox right now is that they completely fell flat on their faces with the Xbox One and the Xbox Series X, unfortunately. And even though they bought about 17 gajillion studios, for the longest time, they didn't manage to put out the games that would motivate gamers to buy their consoles. So of course it didn't sell. And now they shifted to this strategy of course they bought Blizzard and Activision and Bethesda and like a gajillion studios, as I was saying. And so they have a huge amount of games, which are everywhere. And now they fell into this strategy of having Xbox everywhere, which is leading to the potentially really interesting thing, which is Windows 11, but get rid of all the crap that you don't need for gaming, make it into a TV-able interface, which is essentially a console interface, and stick it into a box, call it an Xbox, add some backwards compatibility stuff so that all your old games are compatible, and sell that as the next Xbox console. But the really interesting thing, if they end up doing that, is that they could license this OS and, just like with the PC market, tell manufacturers, just go nuts, make consoles as well. Which
they kind of are implying that by saying everything's an Xbox. That's one of their taglines.
Yeah, well, what they're talking about with that is that they want to say you can stream from anywhere, you can play on PC, you can, and it's kind of diluting the brand, I feel, a little bit. They're overdoing it a little bit with
if everything is something, then nothing is anything.
Yeah, kind of.
Or something,
but
I don't know.
That licensing opportunity with Windows as an OS adapted to a console experience means that they could potentially get a wide variety of different systems, of different hardware that would benefit from the large ecosystem of different manufacturers, and kind of find a back door back into the living room, because the Xbox currently, the Series X and S, are not selling well enough to be an interesting proposition for developers. But if they manage to make this massive, this massive development, this part of the industry, and they end up being in the living room again, of course, they wouldn't get every, the console business is based on 30% commission on everything you sell once you have the install base with,
right. It's a lot like the iPhone business model.
Exactly. It was the precursor to that, probably. Right. But if they have Windows, then people could install Steam and could install everything. But it's better to get, 30, if they get 20% of the sales on that ecosystem, which is in the living room, and they get 30% of that, then it's better than nothing if the console disappears as a console. And they're going to be selling a lot of their own games on those devices, where they don't need to pay 30% if they have consoles in the living room. If they don't, they have to pay 30% to Sony and Nintendo. But if somehow they manage to get their consoles, their hardware into the living room, then they can also be in the living room and have an outlet there.
Daniel, how important is PC gaming to Microsoft's Windows business? Is that a big part of it?
Yeah, it's huge. It's their strongest angle here, actually, is PC gaming.
Interesting.
And what they're really trying to do is knock down. So right now the issue is you have consoles, right? And what I mean by that is the development for a game on console is technically not the same as the development for a game on PC. So you need to convince studios to target both, right? And then of course it's more than that. They also got to target PlayStation and maybe Nintendo, right? So how do you get developers on board to doing this? Especially since they've been pushing this thing called Play Anywhere for a few years, which is if you buy a game for Xbox, you get the PC version for free. And it's a great incentive, but it's hard to convince developers to do that, right? If there's no install base. But what they're trying to do, at least from our reporting from Jez Corden, and that's other news that's come out, is that they're trying to blur the lines between PC gaming and console gaming. And by that, I mean by the development tools used for this, which could also mean a translation layer akin to what SteamOS does with Proton and converting PC games. And so in doing this...
They wouldn't even need that. If the next Xbox runs on Windows 11, then just develop it for Windows and you're good. You have a console version as well.
Yeah, the only issue there comes up is like licensing and like how that gets handled. But yeah, I mean, that's the point, is that they're trying to reduce the barriers for developers
Exactly.
for targeting these systems, these systems. And, the other one is like handheld gaming is becoming really big now because the hardware technology from processors and battery and everything is getting to the point where this is actually feasible, where we can actually have handheld gaming systems that deliver the performance and graphics that we want and it can play these first party games. And so you have all that. You have streaming, of course, worked well to just regular TVs or to your phone or even to handheld games. Like handheld gaming systems can both run the system like the game direct, which is awesome, or you can stream and get even better quality graphics, but at like, a fifth of the battery life because you're not doing the processing on the device itself. So it's true. Patrick's right. They were pushed into the situation from a point of weakness, but from it, they've been able to sort of, read the room, right? I know, Leo, you pointed out, like, the idea of, like, streaming and a subscription service is not new. It's where everything has been going, but they were the first to really sort of push it for gaming. And now NVIDIA's there. Of course, they have GeForce Now, which is a really impressive system, too. So I think they have a strong chance of making an interesting proposition in the coming years, especially since it's going to be mostly platform and hardware neutral. And that's going to be really cool because it means, you can have it on a console in your living room. You can also have it on a handheld that's in your bag. You can have it on your phone. You can have it on your laptop. I can tell you they're really going after ARM64, specifically Qualcomm. They're making their games, they're really targeted, because that's kind of a weakness too right now. It's like, well, can you game with a Qualcomm chip? And you can. They're very powerful. But they're working on that too. So they're going to really knock down those barriers. And I think it's going to really work out for them in the end. It's a stronger position, I would say, than Sony has, which is console. And now they're like, okay, we're going to do a handheld too, but they also have a mixed history on this, right? It's not like Sony is a slam dunk when it comes to hardware and all this technology either. So
play off your strengths, right? That's what you should do.
That's exactly
the irony of this is I've always been Team Xbox, which of course is contrary to the market, but the irony of this is one of the first Xboxes I bought had a pass-through for your TV set. It was designed to be a living room device. It was designed. Yeah. They actually wanted you to use it as your set-top box.
Well, the reason Bill Gates okayed the Xbox is that they were seeing Sony with the PlayStation 3, was it 2 or 3? They were thinking, well, this is the computer in the living room. Right. And Bill Gates, of course, didn't know anything about gaming. But when he saw that, he thought it could be a threat and be the computer in the living room. And he thought we have to be in that market. Of course, that never turned out to become an actual family computer in the living room. But
just 25 years later, Patrick, Daniel, to your point about particularly streaming and GeForce Now, although Microsoft does have their own Game Pass cloud gaming streaming platform, they also, in the previous regulatory environment, had to or said that they would be open, and you can stream all of your Game Pass apps through GeForce Now. And, this ties in again, Daniel, with that handheld gaming push. Those Snapdragon processors have become really capable in the last couple of years. And I'm sure that Microsoft is looking at that environment along with handhelds and cloud, along with AI that can enable this. Although we talk a lot about consumer AI can really help with the efficiencies of delivering this data over the cloud. I think that they're really looking at this as, it's not the second opportunity for mobile, but it's an opportunity for Microsoft to kind of get back something they lost with the mobile revolution.
It also sounds like the end of the discrete GPU. Do you still need an NVIDIA card or a Radeon card?
Well, they haven't had...
I was just going to say,
do they work with ARM, Daniel, or no?
Technically, no, but there's no also technical reason why they can't. It's just that NVIDIA is kind of the gatekeeper right now to that technology.
Well, and they've got bigger fish to fry now with AI. So,
well, we also know NVIDIA for a fact is going to release an ARM64 processor. So,
interesting.
Is that? Are you really? Huh? That's
really interesting.
They're coming into that market.
I got a question. Like, isn't this like a golden opportunity for Mac to just jump in here and just kill everybody? Because everybody's got a Mac.
They don't have developers. They
No
don't
one
have
has a
developers.
Mac.
But all they have to do is like, I don't know, they have to figure out a way to get games to work on Mac
And
because
they don't
everybody's got a
support-
Mac.
And they don't
It's
support
crazy.
Unreal
They do.
Engine, which is what all the
No, but-
developers are using.
No, but they do now. They have a really powerful. I forget the name, but they have a really
Metal.
powerful.
Metal.
No, not just Metal, but
There's also Unity.
Well, Unity is the engine that goes across. No, but they announced it last year, and it went almost unnoticed. Oh God, I'm sorry.
Because
I
on a
don't
hardware
remember.
level,
What
Macs
does it
are
do?
already
What-
Macs
like
are already
powerful
software.
what?
It's like Proton.
Right.
Essentially, it enables Windows games to very easily be.
They did. They snuck that in. There's an emulator
Yeah.
that they can do, and makes your Windows games run on Mac.
I think
Yeah,
they
I don't
announced
think the
just
support
10 new
for that
games that got support.
Yeah.
It's not,
And they
so
have.
the thing is,
It's so weird. The Mac is so weird. They now have. It wasn't the case, 10 years ago, but they now have everything that they need to be a serious contender in the games market. Again,
Except for
it was not the
developers.
case.
Or
Except
the
for developers.
internal will.
It's-
and maybe even the market.
Yeah,
to be
that's-
honest.
Oh, they've got the will. The real problem is Apple makes a lot of money on casual gaming.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
they
the
could do
AAA
both.
I used
gaming
to-
for them, but they want it. They definitely want it.
Years ago, I used to back in the Intel Mac days. Oh, hi. Sorry, my kiddo just broke in here.
Oh, let me see. Well, you should put
Yeah.
her on camera, but
Yeah,
how old is she now?
Okay.
How old is she?
Yeah.
3? Oh.
Yeah, let's hi, did you have a fun adventure
We're
with
having
your
a BBC
mama?
moment right now.
Yeah.
Yes. She's wheeled her way into the room.
So, just for context, for people listening who might not be aware how big each of those markets are, the mobile market is 50% revenue-wise of the entire gaming market.
Wow.
And the PC market is 25, and the console market is 25.
Okay.
So when we talk about Nintendo and Sony and Microsoft with the Xbox, all of that together is 25% of the market. PC is as big as all of that, and again, mobile is as big as both of those together.
Is it just pride that makes companies want to be participate in the piece in the AAA
console?
market?
It's a very in the console market. It's a very captive market. It's a lot of money. You get 30. So this is how the console market game works. You make exclusive games that are really good that you can only get on one platform.
This
on
is
your
what Sony
platform.
has done so well. This
This is what Sony does.
the
This is
secret
what
to Sony's
Nintendo
success.
does.
And
And this
Nintendo,
is
yeah.
what Microsoft failed to do with
Right.
the Xbox. Unfortunately, they didn't have system sellers. That's how you call them. And once that's done, you sell as many consoles as you can, and you have an install base. And once the install base is there, you take 30% of every single thing that other developers sell on your console. And that has been turbocharged with digital distribution and microtransactions and seasons and all of those. PlayStation made more money in 4 years of PlayStation 5 than all of the previous generations combined. Wow. So it's a lot of money still, and there's no reason, like no one would willingly abandon a market like that if they had a strong contender there. So.
I'll also say with the PC market, it's a completely different beast. Addressing what Benito was asking about with Macs, I think people have to understand with PC gaming, it's not just the fact you're running it on Windows. PC gaming is its own genre, and by that I mean okay, you could have a Mac and you could play a video game on it. That's not a gaming PC. A gaming PC is something where you can have RGB lighting. Any
believe me, I understand this more than most people, Daniel. But what I'm saying is that this is a whole new marketplace for game developers. Like everybody who has a Mac that doesn't have a PC is a whole new market.
Because gamers already have PCs. Anyone who's seriously interested in gaming has a PC already. So
it's like video editors, right? Like you as much as video editing can get good on PC, the Macs are still going to be king for video editing and content creators, right? Wherever I see video YouTubers, they always have Macs, right? And sure, some people will use Windows to get in that, but that's just the Mac world. But it's just like that for gaming. If you're already into PC gaming, you've invested in all that hardware, all the accessories. There's like so many different.
It's a
mice,
culture more than just a hardware
Yes.
platform.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's hard to
There's a lot
change
of
culture.
that.
That's hard to do.
Yeah.
As
it's
Apple knows
also-
well, because it's Apple's culture that's kept them on top from their point of view.
Yeah.
Not to make the whole show about gaming, which I
Well, you know, the other choice is the Supreme Court. So I think you should stick with gaming at this point.
And health insurance.
And health insurance and the big, beautiful bill, which is currently being debated and will be debated tonight till the wee hours of the morning. And nobody wants us to talk about that, though we have to, because it does have a significant impact on a number of tech issues. But let's stick with gaming for now.
for just
a little bit more
another
pleasant cocktail
minute,
party.
That's fantastic.
To talk about PC gaming, it has so much freedom, and I love all forms of gaming. You know, I don't have, but PC gaming, especially in the past, I would say 5 years, everything is on PC. Using a controller in the past 10 years has become so easy on PC that a lot of developers put their games that would in previous times being console only, they also put them on PCs because it can work with a controller. It's very easy. You don't really have to support desktop and keyboard and mouse.
Historically, the advantage consoles was it was simple, right? You just play the game. But the advantage, I think, the perception is that the PC game quality is higher. Frame rates are better.
No, it's also very
I don't think that's
expensive.
necessarily true.
Diversity of choice, I think. Ecosystem.
Well,
Steam.
you have everything on PCs, and the one thing I wanted to get to, I'm sorry, is that Japanese developers have started being interested in PCs as well in the last 5 years. So you really can get anything on PCs. What consoles have, if I'm being honest, it's the price, and it's the fact that it's easy to use from your couch.
Yeah.
It's a couch experience, whereas PC you have to be on your
And there's
desktop.
Nintendo, which is its own thing.
Yeah.
and a perfectly good thing. I mean, the Switch has been a huge success, even though it was really only an incremental improvement on the Switch that probably most of the people who bought the Switch 2 already had.
Well, every Nintendo handheld is like the greatest handheld. You know, every Nintendo handheld is the most selling handheld.
But that's the irony. It's not. It's actually like I find the Switch to be one of the worst handhelds ever developed.
Me too.
But because their IP is so strong, it outweighs it.
You gotta
But
have Mario.
Always been the case. That's always been the case since day one.
Exclusives are very important in this business, as you said earlier.
Patrick said it, right? Nobody would intentionally abandon this market, Micro or Nintendo or Sony. But I can also understand if I'm thinking strategically, I see those as islands. And as great as Nintendo's IP is, Sony at least has started to open up and sell their games on PC. And I think that just is an acquiescence of them saying, yeah, well, we're going to still sell hardware, but we have to sell to a bigger market.
And
It's a
Microsoft,
balance,
to their
right?
credit with studios, part of the thing was when they made all those acquisitions was we promise we're not going to abandon Sony, because they could just be like, hey, Sony, no more PlayStation games for Call of Duty, but they're not. They're in fact doing the opposite. Like right now, within the next 2 months, Gears of War Reloaded, which is the first version of the game, but it's been remastered, is coming out, and for the first time, it's going to the PlayStation, right? Like, so Microsoft is all about trying to get their stuff everywhere. Hey, Nintendo, you want our games? You can have them. So it's a very different type of approach that we haven't seen in the gaming industry.
They had to do that to get permission to buy Activision Blizzard, right?
Well,
This
it was
the
very
FTC.
specifically for Call of Duty, which is the highest selling game in the history of video games. And Sony argued, if we don't have Call of Duty, which honestly was a little bit of an exaggeration, they said, if we don't have Call of Duty, that's it. We're toast. We can't compete. It's over. And the only reason, I mean, of course, the reason they said that is that they take 30% again of every sale of every copy of Call of Duty and of every piece of microtransaction that comes after that, which is a lot. But also they wanted to derail the purchase of Activision by Microsoft. And Microsoft offered a contract saying, if that's your problem, we will put Call of Duty on PlayStation for the next 10 years, no strings attached, no problem. And Sony refused to sign it initially when they were starting the lawsuit. And in the end, they signed it because
My guess. So this, just speculation. I have no idea. Just speculation. My guess, if I'm sitting in Microsoft and Sony's decision maker seats, right? Microsoft has kind of pulled off this really interesting thing where they went from competing and failing of selling a box that you put under your TV to selling services and selling an ecosystem, an environment. And Sony could see this coming. It's not just about Call of Duty. It's about them saying, no, we must stop them from becoming a platform because otherwise we remain the company that sells boxes and we're competing with Nintendo. And that's just a guess, but like...
They are competing with Nintendo anyway. The only difference now is until maybe Xbox pulls it off with this new strategy with Windows 11 gaming, they have one less competitor and the most direct competitor. And we are already seeing that Sony is, pushing what's acceptable. They've increased the price of their console, of their hardware many times. They're pricing their accessories at a level which makes everyone go, you're selling it for how much now?
What a smart strategy of Microsoft. Hey, I made my two competitors compete against each other and they're selling junk. Like we're not selling junk. We're selling services. It costs way less than like
a lot more profit
stuff.
in services than there is in junk.
Like it's so smart. They just made their two rivals compete against each other.
They were already competing. Again,
well, I know
the only thing that's changed is that there's one less competitor in that market.
Microsoft's not competing anymore.
They might come back, but Microsoft is now a different. They went from a console manufacturer to a game developer and publisher. It's a different thing. It's like. In a way, Samsung sells RAM chips to Apple and their competitors in another. Right. But there's money to be made there. And so Microsoft is going to put all their games. They have so many games now that, of course, they're going to sell them everywhere. At some point, it becomes more interesting to make money by selling the games in as many places as you can.
All right. Let's take a little break now before Patrick's computer gets overheated. There's actually still a lot of Microsoft news. There's some Apple news. One of the hottest controversies of the week is all about Apple. And then, of course, there's a little bit of politics. I'll put it off as long as I can, but we got to talk about that big, beautiful bill and what it's going to do to a lot of the things that we rely on in tech. But first, a word from our sponsors. It's great to have Patrick Beja, Daniel Rubino, and Dan Patterson here. It's great to see all three of you. What a great conversation. We can keep talking about gaming. I'm enjoying it. I am. This episode of This Week in Tech brought to you today by NetSuite. It's an interesting time for business, to say the least. Tariffs and trade policies are dynamic. Supply chains are squeezed, and cash flow, well, it's tighter than ever. If your business can't adapt in real time, you are in a world of hurt. You need total visibility from global shipments to tariff impacts to real-time cash flow. That's NetSuite by Oracle, your AI-powered business management suite, trusted by over 42,000 businesses. NetSuite is the #1 cloud ERP for many reasons. It brings accounting, financial management, inventory, and HR into one suite. You have one source of truth, giving you the visibility and control you need to make quick decisions. With real-time forecasting, you're peering into the future with actionable data. And with AI embedded throughout, you can automate a lot of these everyday tasks, letting your teams stay strategic. NetSuite helps you know what's stuck, what it's costing you, and how to pivot fast. It's one system, full control. Tame the chaos with NetSuite. If your revenues are at least in the seven figures, download the free ebook, Navigating Global Trade, 3 Insights for Leaders at netsuite.com/twit. That's netsuite.com/twit. We thank them so much for supporting This Week in Tech. We were talking about this. Good news if you've got any Bing Rewards bucks. For a mere 500 Bing Rewards bucks, you can extend the deadline on Windows 10 from October 25th for another year. Daniel, I was so pleased. I thought, wow, I probably don't have any. I have 58,000 Bing bucks. I don't know where these came from. I guess because I subscribe to Game Pass? I don't know, but
I mean, no surprise. I'm a huge user of Bing and Copilot and everything. So
yeah, I'm not. So I don't. I don't know what happened. I have more than Paul Thurrott does.
Yeah. It's
But what it really tells me is that Microsoft is just looking for a way to keep people on Windows 10, or at least not freak people out about October 25th.
Yeah, I think this was something that they had to do anyway, because people
500 points is a big deal. I mean, it's not.
No, and it's not, right? And it's or you can pay $30, I think it was. So, but yeah, obviously most people aren't going to go out and buy a new PC just because their operating system is not going to have support anymore. It doesn't mean it's not going to stop working. You're still going to boot up.
What is the uptake on Windows 11? I think there's more Windows 10 users out there right now than there are Windows 11 users.
It's about shifting over right now to the majority of Windows 11.
Is it? Okay.
Partly because enterprise obviously is going to be at the forefront of doing those upgrades, because they do have to, right? So they will be buying new laptops and stuff because of security concerns. Consumers are a different situation where, and I would also say there's that small percentage of people, probably people listen to this podcast, who are aware that you could technically force any computer to run Windows 11 if you know what to do, right? So it's so those people are just going to get around it anyway. This is just for your normal folks who.
This is for normies who might have I think it's 1,000 Bing bucks.
Yeah, it's 1,000 points. Yeah.
Okay, not 500, but still 1,000.
But it's easy to get 1,000. Yeah, I have over 200. At one point, I had over 220,000. And
wow.
I think, yeah. But what's cool about, for those who don't know.
That's dinner at the Olive Garden, by the way. Don't.
It's more than that. Yeah. I mean, so you can take those points and you can redeem them for gift cards at Amazon and various places. I use some, I donate to an animal shelter, but you can.
That's a good thing. I didn't know you could give it to charity. That's a good thing.
Yeah. There's
Where do
a charity
I find
thing
them?
too. Yeah.
Go to bing.com.
Microsoft Rewards. Yeah. But it's you can use the points for a lot of things, and you can use it for buying Microsoft. You can buy video games with
up in the upper right. You get to see your Microsoft rewards. Look at this, 58,441. But I can give that to charity. That's good to know. I'll save 1,000 for my Windows 10. I'm not running Windows 10 anywhere, but if I were, that's a good thing. To me, it was an acknowledgement from Microsoft that even though we got to stick with our deadline, it's problematic.
Yeah, but it's like one of those things. Some people think, they should just endlessly support Windows 10, but it costs a lot of money, right, to maintain support for an operating system that is.
So that's an interesting question. In fact, I was just reading a piece that said, this is somewhat of a dark pattern. How much does it cost? They're going to be doing the bug fixes for enterprise anyway. Same thing with Apple. Apple pretty much makes you upgrade.
Yeah.
After Tahoe, this is the last version of Mac OS that's going to support the Intel Macs. But those are perfect. The machines are not worn out. Yeah. They're perfectly good. It feels like a dark pattern, is it not?
It is. They would argue that the reason for this is because Windows 11 supports more advanced hardware security features, which is required, they'd say, for a safer internet. So, and there's truth to that today's newer hardware with TPM 2.0 and everything like that is more secure than a laptop from 10 years ago. But of course, there's the economics of it, the situation, which is if you only use a computer on occasion, or you're not that concerned about security, this doesn't come off as like something you have to do, or you necessarily want to go out and buy a new laptop. Even though I would make an argument that for laptops like today's laptops, I would say for the first time and ever, are where we kind of envision they should be. You have 4K screens now. You have 5G. You have
all-day battery life. Yeah.
Yeah. You have extreme performance. You have the video game support, right? So there's like very good reasons why today's laptops are a different story than they were from like 5-10 years ago. It's not even close, but not everybody has the money to go out to be able to afford these things. So
I wish I could find this article I had read, because it made me think, maybe the thing to do, Linux doesn't do this, right? Linux, as long as there are a handful of enthusiasts using a piece of hardware, there will be a version of Linux for it, and most open source programs for it, because they support it. And I'm just thinking, maybe instead of buying another Mac or a PC, I should get a fairly robust Linux box and have thin terminals everywhere. In other words, do cloud computing in my house. You're being sarcastic, aren't you, Dan?
No. I think that sounds fun. I mean,
I feel like I'm getting manipulated into obsoleting this hardware when it's perfectly fine. Maybe it's just me. I know I'm undermining the entire economic basis of the PC industry.
I mean, that's the whole smartphone market too. You're talking about, Leo.
It's absolutely the same thing for smartphones.
The Linux market will always have that advantage, and to sell it to people, it's always going to be that if you're into computers, like you listen to this podcast, right? You read news on this stuff. Linux is always going to be an interesting option for you to explore, even try out. For your average consumer, though, it's just not happening. Ever.
Yeah.
It's just not.
Do we feel bad about all the crap going into the landfill that's not really obsolete?
So at least there are programs in your town, and you're not supposed to just take your laptops and throw them in the garbage. Hopefully no one's doing that.
You're supposed to give them to poor people who can't do any better.
Right. Or at least there's recycling programs that will take care of it. But,
there's a fantastic science fiction book called Waste Tide by Shin Kai-fan, called about kind of a colony that develops around e-waste in China.
Yeah. It's like a cargo cult.
Yeah.
Is it a comedy?
Kinda, yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
I'm just thinking maybe if I got, being perfectly realistic, a PC you buy today, whether a laptop, maybe not so much because they get banged around more, but a PC you buy today should probably be still just as useful 10 years from now, yes? Except for the fact that the operating system gets obsoleted and the browsers don't work, and then you have to upgrade it because your software.
I mean, we've written an article about this. It's some editorials talking about how Chrome OS is a viable alternative for people here. If you have an old laptop, you can't get to Windows 11, and you technically don't want to force Windows 11 on it, even though it's not that hard. You could just put Chrome OS on it, which I would say Chrome OS is actually the mainstream alternative to doing Linux on old hardware. For most people, that would be totally fine.
Sure, and it's Linux. It's just a even simpler Linux. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
All right. I shouldn't bring this up on a technology show because I'm dependent upon you buying a new laptop every few years. So please do us all a favor.
No, but I think you're fine. I think we're underestimating the need of normal people to have something that's familiar and or simple. That's the whole reason why people love Apple computers and phones, because they're a little bit more simple to use than the other things. And even Chrome OS, if you go tell my mom, here, your computer wasn't cutting it for, Windows, whatever, here's Chrome OS. I don't think she's going to be happy with it. She's not going to, it takes her 15 minutes to understand where something is on the desktop. So I think this is a conversation that we can have on this show. I'm not sure it applies to real people, but
I like what you said there, Patrick, though. Familiar and simple. And I think that those things are relative and they're different for different people. Sure. It's Mac and Apple operating systems are familiar and simple for me. My dad found that Chrome OS was actually very familiar and simple for him.
Yeah, but stand back. Apple's about to change the entire look and feel of its operating systems, including Mac OS. Right. It will not be simple and familiar. It'll be a brand new thing.
Is it?
Well, maybe not.
It's just transparent. Menu bar it's confusing now because you see the thing behind it. Yeah. And you're like, but they're changing that too.
There is some trouble in Apple paradise. There's a lot of upset in Apple land over the fact that Apple's put a push notification for its F1 movie in your Apple wallet.
Oh, yeah.
In your everything. It was everywhere.
Yeah. Well, they're really marketing F1. They have a lot at stake for some reason. I mean, they spent $250 million to make the movie. Maybe that's all it was, but
at least it got good reviews.
So. I think it's a fine summer movie. It's by the same guy who did Top Gun Maverick, so it's going to be a fun action movie. It's got real movie stars in it and big, powerful engines. I'm an F1 fan, so of course I'll go see it. But putting an ad in your Apple Wallet, something Apple forbids every other app from doing. John Gruber, who has been until recently an Apple advocate, is very upset. He says the fact that no company can inject an ad into your physical wallet, it just can't happen. So Apple's message to users is trust Apple Wallet and move more of your stuff that goes in your wallet into your digital wallet. But now they're putting ads in there. Now, Microsoft has faced the same heat for similar kinds of ads. They're house ads in Windows. Is this part of the enshittification of modern operating systems? Do we just have to put up with this?
I mean, we talked about earlier with services, right? Services are the new thing. And Apple is facing, I would argue, some pretty big headwinds, right? Regulatory issues in Europe, pressures on the iPhone. They got their new operating system, which is not, or I'd say their new UX is not getting a lot of love. There's there's lack of innovation. They invested a lot in Vision Pro, which appears to be maybe going nowhere, and they missed out on the AI stuff, which they're trying to catch up on now. But the fact is they're getting hooked on services and software and, renewable forms of revenue. The problem when you buy an iPhone is just like when you buy a console for gaming is like you bought it, you're done. So now you get people to buy the games. But
I think the thing that's offensive to me and many is it's not like Microsoft and Apple are in financial difficulties.
No.
They're hideously profitable, both of them.
But capitalism says that a company needs to has
can't stop
growth.
making more money, huh?
Is it the idea that a company with a brand as pristine as Apple and a product that has built up such user trust and equity has decided to, I'll just stick an ad in there because we want people to see our movie?
Yeah, and it makes people, Gruber says, look, seeing this ad is completely destructive, he writes, to all the hard work other teams of Apple have done to make Apple Wallet actually private and to get, more importantly, users believe that it's private. Now users are going, is Apple tracking me? I'm seeing, by the way, I haven't seen the ad, so it's not everybody getting this ad.
I saw it.
It was to be clear for people who. Oh, no, I didn't get the one on Wallet. It was about getting a coupon for buying.
It was a Fandango ad. You probably didn't get it because do you have Fandango?
No,
in
we
France?
don't. We don't.
So you.
But it was like it kind of, if you squint really hard, it kind of makes sense in Wallet because you get a coupon. You get a good price on your tickets, like you have to squint really, really hard. But it was also on Apple Podcasts, on Apple Music, on Fitness Plus, on Apple TV, and on Wallet.
There's places it should be and places it shouldn't be.
I don't know. I think it's not dishonest, but it's like inappropriate. It's like, it's your thing and it's your platform. And there was probably a meeting with Tim Cook, and Tim Cook was like, it would be a real shame if
well, there you go.
If F1 wasn't the best performing movie. I don't know how to make
Patrick,
a Tim Cook
I think that's
how to do a Tim Cook accent.
You said something.
A very good job. Well done.
I didn't know it was across different apps in the Apple ecosystem. Is that what you said? It was across different kinds.
So different kinds of ads, but there was notifications and stuff.
Again, just sitting with your let's put our corporate exec thinking hat on and just put yourself all of those departments are led by somebody. There's a leader there, an executive who's worked up to that job and they're respected in that job. So who above them said that this movie goes into all of these apps? Do you see what I'm saying? There's a tree, an executive decision-making tree. And
they were all in the Tim Cook meeting.
Right, exactly. So all I'm saying is I'm also trying to think as a journalist, who made these decisions and who should I talk
come from the top, right?
Right.
I would argue there's no way, especially the wallet thing, there's no way anyone pushes a notification like this from Wallet without Tim Cook's explicit approval.
Very interesting.
Do you guys agree?
They're out the door.
It shakes Apple's position that we are the privacy company.
It shifts
It's very inappropriate. I think this is something that they that no one will forget.
They worked
And every
really
time
hard
they
to create
say-
that impression. Whether they earned it or not, I don't know. But they worked really hard, spent a lot of marketing dollars to
I'll
give
give
that
credit
impression.
to people pushing back on this for that reason, because Lord knows we've heard of it for years with Microsoft, and Android does this too. Of course, all the stores do it to a certain extent. So I'll give credit, where credit's due. At least people are like being consistent in this, saying that we've been against this stuff for years, and now we're doing it too. But I've been seeing this encroaching on Apple for years. If you go to their store, you see the same thing. I always find this offensive too on Android. You go search for an app, and then the first one comes up. You're like, oh, there it is. You're about to install. Oh, wait, that was an ad. Sorry. It's the app you want is actually below it.
Right.
So it's like, this is all over the place. It's, but everything's a service these days. You're just renting equipment. You're just, everything's a temporary thing.
Again, I'm going to buy a Linux server. I'm going to run thin clients everywhere. And I'm going to see if I can go 10 years. I'll be dead by then anyway. But I'll see how I see who lasts longer, that Linux box or me.
Well, AI Leo will still be here.
There will always be we'll always have AI Leo to kick around.
I think in the case of Apple, from now until the end of eternity, anytime they say we protect your privacy, someone will bring up that wallet ad forever. Yep. This was a very wrong, like a short-term strategy that will hurt them more in the long term, I think.
I don't know that consumers care that much, though. I think, I think that we probably care, the security, the cyber people. Yeah, I think the average consumer doesn't care.
But down the line, I think the reason it's important is that when people say, oh, Apple is secure, they turn to the person in the know who's, aware of Apple and Google and Microsoft, and like, Apple is secure, right? And if that person is angry because there was an ad in their wallet, about a movie they don't care about, then of course it's not from one day to the next, everything has exploded and fallen apart, but it's a dink in the argument, in the armor.
All they have to do, though,
it's a dink. Oh, for sure. Yeah. And it's a further degradation.
Yeah, they just got to stay ahead of the competition in terms of that perception.
Yeah, they're not worse than anybody else.
Yeah, that's exactly
they're better.
Right.
There's no question they're better than everybody else in that regard. And that's why. They're much better. We have to be honest. They are much better than.
Well, this is the first. This is the first. So in that respect, they are better because everybody else has been doing this forever.
Leo was the first. Was it ads in your, just like Daniel said, in all the stores, and now in your app store? I mean, for a long time in the app store, there have been ads, and
right.
Not forever. In the recent era, they came in. Steve tried.
Brand new. We're not brand new. Relatively new. Yeah.
Steve tried with iAds.
He's tried with iAds, then he failed.
So Apple, that you have to submit.
And somebody's pointing that out in chat, that it's only because Apple failed at ads that they became the privacy leader.
Yeah, and they wanted to do the ads with a lot of privacy, but they are private. I think there's a misunderstanding of what Apple says we are private. What they say when they say we are private. I think the main thing they're talking about is third party.
Right. We know everything about you.
Yeah, they try to define
and Apple knows everything
of that privacy.
Although I have
and
to
they do a good job.
But even their arguments and rules that are in place, the ATT, what's it called? ATT app transparency thing.
Yeah.
It's not about preventing individual entities from collecting your data.
Just third parties.
Because of course it's to cross-reference and to build profiles that's what it's about. And in that sense, I think they're very consistent.
I think you can call it security theater because we now know that basically your smartphone is a privacy nightmare, and almost every app that's installed has telemetry. You saw the story that both Meta and a Russian search engine, Yandex, were embedding completely deceptively the capability to track you beyond what ATT would allow. Every app has libraries in it now that's tracking your location. You are, regardless of what Apple says, your iPhone is a privacy nightmare, and Apple has done nothing really to prevent that.
Surprise for them, I never leave my house.
My location is right here, baby.
It's broken. It never leaves.
I am far more boring than you have any idea.
I long ago gave up on privacy. It's certainly an honorable thing to try to a reasonable thing to try to protect your privacy. It's very, very difficult, and there are all sorts of covert ways that people are collecting information about you. And now in the United States, with big balls in the Social Security Administration and DOJ using Palantir to kind of correlate data from a variety of federal databases, nobody knows more about me than the government, and that's all now available to I don't even know who, the Russians, anybody. So good luck if you want to protect your privacy. You better get rid of all your technology. Don't apply for Social Security. Don't have health insurance. Basically, you have to get out of civilization to get away from this at this point. It's infuriating.
I wish I knew more about privacy laws in the EU, because I can't confidently tell you that it's better here.
Well, GDPR is a big step. I mean, at least you have a privacy law. We don't even have a federal privacy law.
I mean, even beyond that, there are laws against creating files, certain types of files. You can't, I would guess it's the same in the US, but like, for example, you can't create a file that says all of these people are Jews, for example, you can't.
But you can create a file that says all these people are autistic. Thanks to RFK
I don't know that
Jr.
you can in the EU.
Not in the EU. Here, though, you can, and that's the
my
federal
point is
government
that you can address these
that.
issues with laws, right? You could.
Yeah.
We should, but we won't.
You need the political will.
Yeah. So I gave up.
That's the other option. Obvious, and of course, the important thing to note here is that you're not necessarily at risk of anything, right? As you can be extremely public because you're not part of any minority that I know of. So
no, I'm lucky, right? I'm privileged. That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah. This, we're celebrating Pride Month. I'd be much more concerned if I were gay, if I were transgender, if I were not white. I mean,
and the problem
it's not
with
a good time to be the other in the United States of America.
Adam Yamaguchi at CBS News has been doing tremendous reporting on this. If you want further,
what's the conclusion?
Oh, I don't know if there's a conclusion.
I think the issue is that there's no immediate conclusion that you can say, okay, this is why it's bad. It's more of if you look at history, if you think about what could be done, and maybe in the future it could lead to something problematic, right?
Exactly.
And so you look at it and you're like, yeah, but I'm happy to get targeted ads. What's the harm? And the reality is, at the moment, there isn't really a harm, except, in the US, it's starting to be a little bit iffy. But that's why it's so difficult to have a definitive conclusion on this issue, is that when people ask, what's the harm? Your answer, even though it's valid, is very vague.
Yeah.
It's like, well...
People always bring up insurance to me, like, well, okay, it's not just marketers that are buying that information; insurance companies are, and even that doesn't scare me.
I was on the Cambridge Analytica beat years ago at CBS News, and that was the hardest thing. What didn't it
end up being that their capabilities were highly overstated?
Yeah, I mean that is true, but while we were learning this, I would have editors and producers challenge me and say, "Well, okay, so yes, this seems bad, and it probably is bad, but what's the harm? If I'm sitting and watching this show or reading this news story, how did this impact me? What's the harm?" And there are harms, but like Patrick said, it's kind of hard to enumerate what those are in a very simple and easily digestible way that doesn't get into nuance and kind of big picture stuff.
Well, I can paint you a scenario where in that case, it's problematic. If you have
scenarios, but right. It requires explaining. And when you're explaining, you're losing. So when you're trying to explain things to people, like what is the harm, you have to explain things. And that requires nuance and patience and all that.
Let's take a break. I just want to let you know that our ads, in fact, are not based on targeting, except in the very broad and, by the way, very effective way that if you're listening to our shows, you're interested in technology. That seems to be sufficient. No podcast knows, as you know, Patrick, information, demographic information about its audience. So we're not able to use that information. Nevertheless, there are plenty of advertisers who say, well, but I like a tech audience, right? I like IT decision makers, and we do appeal to that group of people. So there are ways to do advertising without spying on your audience.
I mean, that's how the entire world worked before the internet. You would target a magazine or a certain slot on TV where you had a broad, this age group, this socioeconomic type of people, and it worked okay. All right,
we're going to take a little break, and I'm going to do an ad for you, even though I know nothing about you. We're talking about this week's tech stories with Patrick Beja, Daniel Rubino, Dan Patterson. More to come in just a little bit. But first, a word from our sponsor, Shopify. Now, imagine you're lying in bed late at night. You're scrolling through this new site you found. How many times have I done that, right? Hitting the add to cart button on that item you've been looking for. Man, those jeans are going to look good. I mean, now you're ready to check out, but then you remember, oh crap, this happens to me all the time. Your wallet's in the living room downstairs, and I don't really want to enter a credit card number right now. Just as you're getting ready to abandon that cart, that's when you see it. Oh, the purple shop button. If you've shopped online, chances are you have bought from a business powered by Shopify. And that, by the way, both my kids use Shop Pay on their websites. Salt Hank, my daughter, that purple Shop Pay button you see at the checkout there, that makes buying so incredibly easy. There's a reason so many businesses sell with it, because Shopify makes it incredibly easy to start and run your business. Oh, I love that sound. Shopify is the commerce platform behind 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S., from household names like Mattel and Gymshark and, yes, Salt Hank, to brands just getting started. Shopify gives you that leg up from day one with hundreds of beautiful, ready-to-go templates to express your brand style. Oh, and forget about the code. You don't have to worry about that at all. Tackle all those important tasks in one place, from inventory to payments and analytics and more. Spread your brand's word with built-in marketing and email tools to find and keep new customers. Did I mention that iconic purple Shop Pay button? It's used by millions of businesses around the world. I think I did. It's why Shopify has the best, this is important, the best converting checkout on the planet. Your customers already love it. If you want to see less carts being abandoned, it's time for you to head over to Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/twit. Go to shopify.com/twit. Shopify.com/twit. Henry uses it to sell his salts and his pickles and his apparel. My daughter is selling books, t-shirts. It really is empowering. It's very cool technology. Shopify.com/twit. Thank you, Shopify. So the Supreme Court ended its session this week with a flurry of decisions in all interesting different directions. I'll start with the good news. Supreme Court has rejected claims that the Universal Service Fund is unconstitutional. Low-income broadband fund can keep running, says the Supreme Court, which frankly kind of surprised me. This was on Friday. They rejected claims that it's unconstitutional. The Universal Service Fund subsidizes telecommunications services for low-income consumers, rural healthcare providers, schools, libraries. It's supervised by a nonprofit the FCC named to run the program, USAC, the Universal Service Administrative Company. I have to say that despite the fact that the Supreme Court has supported it, it seems to me unlikely the FCC will continue to do so. So It may be a Pyrrhic victory after all. They have made a decision that some say is going to cause a lot of problems. This is the Free Speech Coalition versus Paxton. Of course, Paxton of Texas, the Attorney General of Texas. Age verification. The Supreme Court ruled that it is okay for Texas to require adult sites to require age verification. They said it's not meaningfully more risky than having to show your ID at a liquor store. I think this is a huge threat to privacy, but I'm curious about what you think. Because, of course, if you kind of think about it, if you're going to require age verification for adult sites, that means everybody who uses an adult site will have to present government IDs that says who they are. And that information will be recorded by the adult site and stored in a database. And yes, probably sold on to the highest bidder.
Or leaked and hacked.
Or leaked and hacked.
Or used to target companies that they don't like and say you are an adult site and must register, and if you don't, you're out of business.
I suspect Ken Paxton's real goal is to actually put pornography out of business, right? That they're not worried about age verification. They want all these sites to go away.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, use this to target the company. Like, well, if you can't do this in South Dakota and then West Virginia, and then another, right? You chip away at state by state.
And that's what's happening. Texas is not the only state. There are, I think, 20 or so with laws like this. And incidentally, porn is in the eye of the beholder. An adult site could be an LGBTQ resource site. It could be sex education. It could be women's healthcare providers.
Is it? Are those, like, how does, I hate that this is happening because I'm going to turn into the devil's advocate here. And I really don't like that I'm going to defend anything about this. But which sites are designated as needing age verification? Is it actual well-known porn sites, or is it?
It's not named by site.
Okay. Is it just like a general, porn sites, like sites that have porn, have to age verify, and each site has to self-determine if they are.
Here's the definition of sexual material harmful to minors directly from the Texas bill. Any material that the average person, okay, there's problem number one, applying contemporary community standards, that's problem two, would find taking the material as a whole. Well, you have to remember, we're in a country where they ban books from the library, like Shel Silverstein's books from the library because of, violating contemporary community standards.
Which community? Is it
which community?
Is it the whole country? Is it your community? Is it,
can't have nipples. Oh, female nipples. Male nipples are okay. No caressing, touching, or fondling of nipples, breasts, buttocks, or genitals. Anyway, you could. I don't want.
So okay,
you could keep reading this. I'll probably get banned if I continue.
So the reason I ask is that we have a similar thing happening in France at the moment. It's happening now, and a lot of porn sites have been required to implement age verification techniques with the same issue that you have in the US, which is the age verification technique. It was not specified. It's like, just do it. And the entire tech community is like, well, funny story. It's impossible to do while also protecting your, guaranteeing your private data to stay private.
Well, that's what Pornhub, which admittedly it's in the name, is a pornography site, is an adult site, said. It says, well, okay, we're leaving Texas because we can't do this in a private fashion.
Yeah, they did that in France as well. And then there was a legal proceeding that allowed them to come back. And they are currently implementing something in the UK after having said we are fighting for... The problem for Pornhub, I suspect, is not so much to defend freedom of speech and a little bit more that, if they implement a system like that, their traffic is going to, be full by 90%.
Well, and their point,
so I think
which
that's
is an interesting point, is
motivation.
that, yeah, we're going to be good about it, but there's plenty of sites that aren't.
Well, so in France, the way it works, and I'm sure you're going to say, oh, but that's the government doing more than it should. It's not whatever porn is. They designated a number of specific sites. Like they said, you, and you have to do it. And so everyone else, including sites that might provide information to, trans people or, that kind of thing, they know that they're not in that bucket. So that's one difference. The other thing I do want to say, I completely agree with the tech community that this is a security, I'll say issue, so as not to say nightmare. But I also want to acknowledge the fact that the science on the topic is that there is a problem. Teens are getting, well, I'm not going to go into details, but the consensus is this is a problem, and young people are getting issues with their view and image, self-image and body image and view of sexuality. And it is not the same as when we, some of us went and, watched porn movies once a month or whatever. It's so readily available. It's so everywhere that it is becoming an issue. Same with social networks.
Just out of curiosity, what is the issue? Are kids not fornicating anymore?
Well, I'm sure they are, but it's
yes, I'm sure they are too.
I'm sure.
So what
is
the issue?
Well, I would refer you to the papers.
I think when you say science, that's a pretty broad term for this.
What I mean, the science is the academic studies on the matter. Okay, you don't believe me. I will try to go and dig up the science.
No, I've seen them. I know what you're talking about.
Having a pedantic discussion about what is or is not, I think, is kind of part of the point. And and I think that's a distraction. And I think that not enumerating, not defining what is or is not is also part of the strategy here. It is so that we can define it ad hoc as we go and define things that, like Leo said, could expand the scope of merely what you or I might think of as straight porn sites. This is something that is designed to be a little more strategic and crafty and define those things however they want and however particular courts want in certain states.
I think there might be an intent in Texas, at least, or certain states and with certain political leaders that is, I believe, absent here in France. Again, it is specific sites that have been named that are specifically porn sites. It's the scope is that you can disagree that this is right, and
no, they don't name specific sites. That's the problem in this law.
Yeah, that's the issue. Yeah. That's why you can get to the concern. Well, what about things that are informing?
We're in
and
a country, Maryland, for instance. The Supreme Court said parents can pull their kids from public school lessons if LGBTQ books are used. We're in a country where the definition of what is harmful to children is getting broader and broader and broader.
But violence is okay. Don't forget. Violence.
Yeah, that's fine.
Oh, that's all the violence you want, because
especially in our Game Pass video games, Daniel.
Yeah.
Well, I guess my point was we have that too in France, but it's much more narrow.
You have a naked woman on your money.
We have naked people everywhere. Yeah, when you were talking about breasts, do you
allow kids under 16 to handle French money?
But that's the point. This is not what it's about. It's about the specific effects of the readily available and abundance of pornographic content.
But
I sound so prudish when I'm saying this. I don't think but
there's a nipple on breasts.
Seeing breasts is not porn.
It absolutely is. It's in that law.
In the U.S., not in France.
Well, that's my
point.
That's all we're talking about.
Hey,
what I'm saying is we're doing it right, and clearly you're doing it wrong. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Leo, just a question. I don't know, and I really haven't been following the particulars, but does this intersection 230 at all?
That's an interesting question. So
Like,
230.
could you apply this? I guess part of my thinking is, could you apply this to like Blue Sky or X or Threads or any social media
I
site
think you
that
could.
has
Okay.
air quotes
That's to
pornographic
answer that
content?
question,
That's
yes.
kind of where I'm thinking. Like,
Because
does
if
this
there's
intersection
anything adult on those sites, then those sites could be required to do age verification.
And,
Yeah,
and
that's
that's
kinda
the
what I'm
caveat
thinking.
to my we're doing it right, which that is already a problem for us. What about Reddit? What about X? What about Blue Sky?
Reddit's
Clearly
Reddit,
there's
all of
very
those sites are loaded
explicit
with
content.
adult
Yes,
content.
absolutely. And that's a huge problem because when you, and we actually, we want to, we, like the French government, wants to ban social media for kids beyond below 15 in the same way that they want to ban porn, which becomes a much bigger issue because if you ban porn sites, at least you're limiting the age verification to porn sites. If you want to age gate X and Blue Sky and Reddit, you're essentially age gating and age verifying the entire internet, which is a much bigger, like whatever issue you have with age verification on porn sites, it's 10 times worse when you have to do it on the whole internet. Because as you said, Leo, if you want to make sure that a kid is a kid, you have to check everyone. You can't magically know. That's the issue. So you have to ask to find a way, and the technical means are not defined. There are a lot of companies that are claiming they can do it with AI, with selfies, with like, it's not all government ID, but the question still remains, what do you do with all that information? Do you keep it? Do you store it? They say they don't. Do we trust them? Like, that's the whole problem.
Luckily, we also know that kids can never hack around stuff and
Right.
find new ways. Anyone who has kids and has a router and they've locked it down knows it's 100% effective, and the kids never find a way around it.
You know, I used to make that argument. I think it's a kind of a fallacy. Of course, people are going to break the law, kind of, if you want to push it to the, that's not a reason to not to make laws, right? Of course, we know that kids are.
How realistic is this?
But
Like
if it's
you just,
100%
talked about,
unenforceable, that's
Right.
and instead causes issues with access to free speech content for adults, then you got a problem.
I don't know how enforceable it is. What I can tell you is that people, not me, who have tested the Brave browser with its Tor mode, may have been able to access porn sites when they were blocked without doing anything complicated at all, and just launching.
Well, thanks for the tip. Let me write that down. Was it Brave?
Browser. Brave is a really impressive browser. That's what I'm saying. There's like 9 million ways around this stuff.
It has essentially a Tor mode where it connects to the Tor
How long before the
network.
junior high school? Everybody in the junior high school knows.
Remember
Oh,
when
you
that
just
was
use Brave.
complex?
As much as I replied, well, it's not a reason to not make a law. I would have to admit, this is so
Hey,
simple.
fentanyl's been illegal in the United States for a long time for anything but medical professionals. It hasn't stopped the epidemic in any respect. Anyway, the Supreme Court has ruled, so it's done. It's over. We'll watch with interest in those states where those laws exist to see what happens.
I just find it
I
funny
will
that
say the way it's defined is very concerning. I completely admit. Like, if it's just, it's the problem is you can't define it unless you name the specific sites. It seems like what a reasonable person, according to current community standards, it would seem like a reasonable way to define it. There's no other way to define it, but even that is too vague. So,
Daniel, what were you going to say?
I just find it funny that we live in an age where people get elected to government and talk about the deep state and you can't trust the federal government and all that. But people
states'
are like,
rights.
Yeah, let me give them my ID. Let them enforce this. And it's just like, I don't know. It seems like the people, this is why I always say everybody on the right and the left are full of it when it comes to government and this idea of like, no, we want small governments. Like, no, you don't. You want government that works for, you want the government that enforces the things you believe in against the people you don't like.
I think you're exactly right. Yeah.
It doesn't matter what side you're on.
Does the left want small government?
Yeah, the extreme left? Left libertarians do.
Libertarians
As an
do.
anarchist, I do.
Yeah.
But I'm not part of the liberal Democratic Party.
Are you an
No,
anarchist?
those people
Do
don't.
you have an
Yeah.
A tattooed on your bicep there?
I've been saying I've been an anarchist since high school.
I like
and
that.
I still stick with it.
like
it's the
that.
only, and anarchism isn't about saying we need to get rid of all government. It just says, I think most forms of government or authority are probably full of bullshit.
Have you lived
It's
in the EU?
No.
Okay. It might change your mind.
No, there's no change in my mind. If you're everybody's either for freedom or you're against freedom. You're
You're just against
a lie.
freedom, you French people. You.
Yeah. But everybody's for freedom. We're just going to talk about how much we have.
Right.
But the goal should always be we strive for more and we try to limit authority.
I agree with you. I try to think of government as not necessarily authority. I think good government is reflecting the desires of society or the needs of society or the goals of society, like roads,
Sure.
no pollution, things like that.
Yes.
Is that not a reasonable thing for a society to do? And
corruption of
and how
government-
would you do that? You would do that with government.
Yeah, no, I mean, so it's like, this is always the fact, we can go down this hole. The fallacy of anarchism is always this idea that like it's against
All
government, period. And you
Right.
can never, like, if you have one person who goes, you can't do that. It's like, well, we're not anarchists anymore, right?
Right.
Like, that's not how it works because we live in what we would describe as a liberal democracy, although people would say you're a constitutional republic, but we have democratic mechanisms. All right, so did I vote for the stop sign down the street? No. Did I vote to have the road paved down the other street? No. Did I vote for? So we don't vote on everything. In fact, we don't even vote for
we
the
have a
president.
representative government. But you would agree
But we
that the
still
stop
have
sign's a good
democracy.
thing, isn't it?
Sure, of course. But what I'm
okay.
saying is we still describe ourselves as a democracy, even though the fact we don't
we've
even
never
vote
been
for
a
a
democracy.
president.
It's always been
So
representative.
democracy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that stuff is so it's never an absolute.
But that's the only workable way to do it. If you had to vote on every stop sign.
Of course. No, of course. But that's my point. This is about definitions, right? So anarchism isn't. There's a famous quote about this. It's not whether we achieve anarchism today, tomorrow, or whenever. It's that we walk towards anarchism forever. Basically, it's this idea that you just strive for the goal of limiting government where you can. And it doesn't mean
That seems fair.
Yeah. And I think
seems
that's
fair.
why I don't find it a controversial idea. Like if you've read anything about the founding of the United States, this is literally
That was the
Thomas
whole
Paine.
point.
Like
Yeah.
this was what everybody wrote about, this is
And-
Emerson, this is that stuff,
No
Right.
kings.
And part of that was that the corruption of government is not an argument against government itself. Those two
Right.
things are separate. And
Oh,
that
that's
is actually
interesting.
fundamental. I mean, that's fundamental to the founding of this country. It's also something that like, although you may be upset at your politicians, demand better. Work within the system and demand better. Destroying the system harms other people. I have empathy for other people. Let's
so-
not just.
So anarchy isn't about destroying the system.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I'm ascribing things to Daniel that came from my punk rock youth of people who I disagreed with.
There is that very basic, like, we must destroy the system. But that's more
Yeah. That's
nihilism.
who I'm talking about, not you.
That's more nihilism than okay.
Yeah. Which is
That's also
nihilism
just
for those-
Black Flag fans.
Yeah, right. Yeah, for those that don't understand, nihilism is about let's destroy the system because whatever comes after it has got to be better than what we have now. That's
Yeah,
That is
basically it.
not.
Which is a very dangerous way.
Yeah,
of
that's
looking at it.
demonstrably not true from history.
Sure.
And that's political
Unless you
nihilism.
really like
just,
Visigoths.
that's political
I would
nihilism,
say-
not nihilism as a whole. Just
We started this show with
Yes.
Xbox.
Yeah, I know. That's why I started with Xbox. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we will, enough of that. Let's talk about, AI. We haven't talked about AI yet. Okay. That'll be good. And the debate does continue for the big, beautiful bill. I will tell you some potential negatives. And one of them is the debate over whether one of the amendments to the big, beautiful bill, which is really a budget bill, budget reconciliation bill, is a 10-year moratorium on AI regulation by the states. And that is highly debated. I'm curious what you all think of that. We'll get to that in just a little bit. But first, a word from our sponsor, Zscaler, the leader in cloud security. Hackers, we know this, are using AI to breach your organization. We also know, on the other hand, AI powers innovation, can drive efficiency. So it's a double-edged sword. It can also help bad actors deliver more relentless and effective attacks. If phishing attacks over encrypted channels increased it by 34.1% last year. And that was fueled primarily by the growing use of generative AI tools, which makes those phishing attacks much more effective, by the way, as well as phishing as a service kits. Yes, there is such a thing. All industries from small to large are facing this challenge, but they're also wanting to use AI to leverage it to increase employee productivity with public and AI for engineers, with coding assistance. It's a huge, huge thing that's happening. Marketers using AI for writing tools, finance, creating spreadsheet formulas, automate workflows for operational efficiency across individuals and teams. Companies are embedding AI into applications and services that are both customer and partner facing. Ultimately, AI can help you move faster in the market and gain competitive advantage. So we've got this balance, right? Companies need to rethink how they protect their private and public use of AI. They also have to think about how they defend against AI-powered attacks. And that's where Zscaler comes in. Jason Kohler, who's the Chief Information Security Officer, the CISO at Eaton Corporation, leverages Zscaler to embrace AI innovation and combat AI threats. He says, quote, data loss detection has been very helpful for us. ChatGPT came out. We had no visibility into it. Zscaler was our key solution initially to help us understand who was going to it and what they were uploading. Imagine, right? Your employees are going to use this. Zscaler can help. The other thing Zscaler helps with is security. Traditional security tools like firewalls, perimeter defenses. Then you have to have a VPN, right? And that gives you a public-facing IP address, which exposes your attack surface. And then this, AI-empowered hacking era is absolutely you're defenseless. So this is the other side of the coin. It's time for a modern approach with Zscaler's comprehensive zero-trust architecture and AI that ensures safe public AI productivity, protects the integrity of private AI, and stops AI-powered attacks. Thrive in the AI era with Zscaler Zero Trust Plus AI to stay ahead of the competition and remain resilient even as threats and risks evolve. Learn more at zscaler.com/security. That's zscaler.com/security. We thank them so much for supporting This Week in Tech. So there were two big court decisions this week, one to really benefit Anthropic. The other benefited Meta. In both cases, the courts held that AI training can be fair use. Judge William Alsop in the 5th District, or it's in the West Coast, said it was fair use for Anthropic to train on a series of authors' books. The lawsuit brought by the Authors Guild. Then Judge Vincent Chabria dismissed another group of authors' complaints against Meta for training on their books. Now, Alsop pointed out that Anthropic did break the law when they used pirated media, which might put them, in other words, the books that they bought and scanned, that was fair use. The books they didn't buy but pirated, that was not fair use. Meanwhile, the metadata ruling asserted that because of a flood of AI content could crowd out human artists, the potential was there for the entire field of AI training to be fundamentally at odds with fair use. That's something you've been saying, Benito. Neither case addressed questions about generative AI. When does output infringe copyright on who's on the hook if it does? However, I think Anthropic and Meta are both saying a victory for AI, that AI reading content, if it does so legitimately, is fair use of that content. You agree? Dan, what do you think? You work in this business.
My instinct, especially like in the last, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, initially when generative AI first hit, my instinct was that if you are ingesting, transforming, and reselling, to me as a layperson, that doesn't seem like fair use. That seems like you're taking something, turning it into something else and repackaging.
But what are you reselling? If you read Moby Dick, if your machine reads Moby Dick,
and then
sells a summary of Moby Dick, is that not transformative.
But doesn't the training data help the capabilities of the AI improve?
Yes, but
So I'm just saying, like, this was my thought initially a couple of years ago. Now I don't know. I'm of two minds. One is ethics and one is legal. And legally is what I'm way more interested in, because I can have my feelings, but my feelings might change when I have more information, and my feelings might harden when I have more information. So what I'm really interested in is, like, what legally is happening here, and what are the harms or the maybe benefits? What are the implications? I know that it sounds like I'm ducking it, but like I'm way more interested in like how these case laws are being settled, and then what does that do to the AI systems? And I kind of have this other feeling where like AI has been really beneficial to a lot of my life, and I'd kind of like to see it improve, but not at the expense of the environment.
As Sam Altman said, AI that's trained only on non-copyrighted material isn't going to be very useful. Do you want that AI?
The problem with all this, of course, is the fact that as humans, we learn by training ourselves on copyrighted material every single day.
Right. This whole show is based on copyrighted material. I hate to tell you.
All art is derivative, right? You know, so that's the problem here, is that like this is how we all function. It's just AI takes it to a whole other level in terms of performance and capability. So that's why it feels
performance
wrong.
And capability. Yeah.
So it feels wrong. But I think legally, this is going to end up favoring the AI companies, at least the way that the law currently is written. I think it's going to.
At least in the case of Anthropic, the key argument that the judge or the key part of his judgment was the fact that the AI's work is transformative.
Right.
He even phrased it as, this is the most transformative, one of the most transformative things I've seen in my life.
And in the US, that's one of four tests for fair use, that if something is transformative.
Right. In the case against Meta, I believe, the argument was, the judge said, you guys, the authors, lawyers, did a terrible job. If you had said this or that, I would have judged differently. So I suspect the next case will go differently. But certainly in the one against between Anthropic and the three authors, the effect, the pirated part is important for Anthropic because they pirated a lot of books. And if the damages are important, then it can result in like several $100 billion in damages. But for future AI training companies or future models, if they train, or at least according to this judgment, we'll see how it goes following the legal process. But if this judgment stands, then it means very clearly that training an AI on copyrighted content is fair use. And that is a huge part of the whole conversation. It might be even argued that this is the main contention between copyright holders, authors, creators, and the AI companies. That's the whole salami. How do you say it? I'm trying to sound American. That's the whole thing.
I don't know if that's American or Italian.
The proper word would be Megillah.
Salami.
The proper word would be Megillah.
Megillah is the American word.
That's the whole Megillah. But yeah, so the key takeaway here is, yes, it's fair use. And that is very bad news for content creators. And this is very good news for AI companies. Again, if this ruling stands down the line,
Last
which
week
it
we
very
had
likely
Jason
might not.
Calacanis on, who has invested in a company that does licensing of content for AI. He said that's going to ultimately be where we're going to end up, is that AI companies, because they're going to make money on this training, will end up licensing content so that they have the content to make.
I think that's the future of news media too. I have this ongoing chat with some people, like former CBSers, and this is kind of a fun debated topic, like the future of media. But like, I think that like, you know, why create your own brand and then license it to an AI? Why not just do your own content directly for the AI?
I don't pay, I subscribe to Bloomberg and New York Times and Washington Post. I subscribe to a lot of news services, but this show is based on what I glean, and you know it as co-host because you see the rundown, which is basically a series of links to other people's articles. This show is completely derivative, but I consider it fair use. It's transformative. I do, as a matter of course, try to credit articles and the authors of the articles when we talk about it. But I'm doing kind of the same thing as an AI is doing.
That's how it's always worked in the media. And quite frankly, even if you discount like the very low quality sites and the AI sites that are everywhere now, even before that, the internet is roughly, 90% people commenting on an AFP or AP report. And it's like, the news
Jeff Jarvis
is
says that. He taught journalism for years. He said, there's one story that's original and the rest are copies.
Yeah.
And
that's
the
why
reason
everybody
it's
tries to break
different
news.
is what Daniel was saying. The scale and capability are so different that you should at the very least re-examine the conclusions you've come to in the world before AI. You should look at them and see if they still fit for the situation that is. It's kind of like social media. Like, you have laws and rules about free speech and everything in a world where people talking mean, you go out on your lawn and you yell at a cloud. It's a different world when anyone yelling at a cloud can reach the entire planet. Right?
Yeah.
So I feel like this is what the conclusions we apply to the world of media and what you do and what I do are maybe not appropriate when AI gets involved. Yeah. Maybe they are, but we should.
It reminds me very much of back in the 90s and everything with MP3s and, people trading music and iPods. Like, this idea was, you would go out to the store, you bought a tape or you bought a CD, you owned that song and that music, and as your one copy of it. Even copying to a cassette was like, the music industry was like, eh. But then once it became the ability to like mass copy music and just share it just the scale of it. Yeah, the scale of it was just like something no one had anticipated. And so all these questions came about, like, can you copy a song and turn to an MP3, and who can you share it with, and who pays for it? And, can you have an iPod that jams like 10,000 songs on it, right? None of this was anticipated. So like the idea of like, I agree with Patrick about, we need to kind of go back and rethink this, because the way everything is changing right now, it's just, we never thought of it that way, even though it's using the same systems we've always used, which is...
we actually talked about this on Friday. I had a guest, Stephen Witt, who wrote a book called How Music Got Free, which is the history of the digital music revolution. Really good book. And what became clear after reading the book and talking to Stephen is that while everybody and their brother, the music industry sued their customers, people fought this, but ultimately it wasn't anything you could stop. So they adjusted their business model. They changed to accommodate it. Now you can argue, well, this new streaming model isn't very good for artists and so forth, but it was a way of handling this piracy problem. And I don't think the piracy problem is considered much of a problem anymore, mainly because they made it so easy to access the music in high quality for a very low cost that people just nobody bothers trying to steal music anymore, right?
The interesting thing is that piracy is coming back for video because there are so many streaming services.
That's true too.
And their prices have gone up, especially Netflix. And
so it's an economic force, piracy.
It's a user experience. Yeah. Yes.
There's a great book that is tangential or at least adjacent to that era called Sellout by Dan Ozzie. And it's about the independent musicians that were either took advantage of this from the late 90s to the early 2000s. We really don't think about this idea of selling out anymore. But at the time, it was a really big deal. And some bands, air quotes, sold out and got hammered by this change. And some bands really figured out how to adjust to the permutations of content distribution changing so rapidly. Anyway, it's a really fun book to read about that era.
Make selling out embarrassing again, please.
Yeah. You remember when we cared about selling out?
Yeah, man. Make that embarrassing again.
Yeah.
The conclusion of all of those thoughts is that at sometimes there's a piece of technology that comes on the scene, and it's a genie that can't go back in the bottle, or a cat that's out of the bag.
Yep.
And that's it. That's the new state of the world. And I fully believe that AI is an invention. Generative AI exists now. There's no going back to a world where it doesn't exist. So we have to figure out how it's going to work out with it existing legally and practically. But I honestly think that the copyright holders and the artists and the creators, I've seen no evidence that serious people thinking about this think that there's a way to, make it so AI doesn't exist anymore. Some people on Twitter or whatever will say, "Oh, this is crap. But all the people who are actually thinking about the problem are like, how do we make it work? SAG-AFTRA, for example, the actors union in Hollywood and the US, have been on strike for video game voiceover and motion capture and everything, and they ended up finding an agreement after 11 months of striking. And from what we've seen, what we understand of that agreement is that it's informed consent for voice actors on how their voice will be used and proper compensation. So this is just to say they understand, even them who are extremely subject to being replaced by AI or, partially erased, and they are working with it and trying to make sure that their opinion and the way they want things to go is forcefully taken into account.
Yeah, I actually made that case to Stephen Witt, is that it's important to read his book because we are repeating that cycle, the cycle that happened with music now with AI. The question, though, and it's the same question really for both technological inventions, is what happens to the creator? Yeah. What happens to the artist, the musician, the writer? Because it's pretty clear that in both cases, we need people to make music. We need people to create the content the AI is ingesting, right? So how do we make sure that they are fairly compensated? This article from The Walrus, the death of the middle-class musician. It's easier than ever to make music, harder than ever to make a living from it. And this is what technology hath wrought. Everybody has Logic on their laptop.
Is it harder to make a living than when you had to make music in your garage and try to find?
It's harder to get rich.
Well, yeah.
No, yes, it's hard. No, I will say yes. It's harder to make a living. Yes,
it's harder to make a decent living, maybe.
Yeah, because the focus has gone from selling albums to touring. Basically, you need a tour and make money through merchandise.
No, also like just generally the environment values music very low. So even playing gigs every day, you're not going to make enough money to make a living. Like
a couple of years ago,
it's just the value of music has been diminished.
A couple of years ago, I had a dinner with Paul Simon, and I was asking about piracy and how I felt about it. He says, "My only concern is my kids. My son is a musician. How is he going to be able to survive in a world that values his creations so little?" And I think that's a reasonable question.
Does the world, I'm sorry, again, does the world value creation so little?
Yes, absolutely. 100% yes, absolutely.
And I think
if you're a graphic artist, you're worried because everybody's using Midjourney to create the illustrations for the
music in the monoculture.
I would argue there are more creators in the world right now than there have ever been. Maybe they're making YouTube
There's no doubt about that.
And
that's exactly what they're doing, Patrick. Exactly. And there's, in fact, I would encourage you to the YouTube channel for Rick Beato. He was an old rock and roll producer who has been streaming this. He talks about this exactly. And you can look at the stats. The music business charts this because they see Spotify as their own competition. They see silence as a competition, and they certainly see YouTube as a competition because it has sapped their resources, which is original content creators. Yeah, absolutely, Patrick. There is so much fear in the music business right now about what's happening now, and that yes, there are more creators, but they're on YouTube and Substack. They're not making rock and roll.
So on the one hand, if your need is to create, And ultimately, that is a human need.
Yeah.
You definitely have the tools available to you to do that. Anybody can be a podcaster. Anybody can be a blogger. Anybody can be an artist or a photographer. The question is, can you make your living doing that? And I think increasingly the answer is we saw this happen with photography decades ago. It got harder and harder to make a living as a photographer as soon as everybody had a camera in their pocket. So I don't know, does the world owe everybody who wants to be an artist a living? No. Not necessarily.
I will go one step further, and in so doing, become the bad guy that everyone can hate. And I disagree with myself here, but I'll ask for the sake of
play devil's
argument.
advocate, Patrick. That's what I always do.
I think there will always be people who want to make music.
Yes, because you do it because you love it.
Yes, but do we need? I can't believe I'm going to say this. Do we need music?
Yes.
There was a time when sculpting was one of the major art forms.
We don't need sculpting. We need music.
Music is probably the oldest art form, though, Patrick. Music is probably the oldest.
Music, I will say,
no,
I do need.
I'm just asking.
I understand what you're saying, though. Is do we need the arts? And I would say that is probably the most fundamental thing humans do, and we will always.
We have lots of different. I would argue TikTok making is a form
Absolutely.
of art.
Nobody's saying that people aren't able to create. In fact, it's obvious. Almost everybody now can be a creator.
Look, it's like World of Goo, right? You have goo blobs here and here, and the YouTube glue blob took the music blob, right? So yes, we have creators. They're just doing this thing over here.
I can't accept the idea that maybe there will be less musicians, less.
No,
artists,
there won't be. But they'll just be harder to make a living as a musician. Look, I have to say, in the Middle Ages, how many musicians made a living? You made music because you were entertaining your family at night. You didn't have a TV set.
Okay, first of all, the music industry itself is only about 100 years old. It's really not.
Yeah, it's brand new. Yeah. Exactly.
As an industry. So we've only really been able to make money by being a musician for the last 100 years.
Precisely. In fact, Jeff Jarvis says this in general about mass media.
But that's a good thing. We should have kept that going, right? What do we take that away? Like, that's the question. Are we trying to take that away?
Do we need platinum artists is the question you should be asking, right? Do we need to have people become insanely rich and popular, or is it all right to have musicians in every subway stop?
That's kind of the heart of that book, Sellout. It's that a number of musicians looked at what was happening in the music business, the commodification of their art, and they decided to do. Some musicians did not do that. Some musicians decided to continue to try to push into the major record label system, and other musicians found that they could tour and develop an audience and cultivate that audience and find other revenue streams. But that was a much smaller group of musicians than existed before.
Well, and that's why Pamplemousse, remember Pamplemousse, they lost a huge amount of money on their tour. And what's his name?
Jack Conte created
Patreon.
Patreon.
Well, so as a way for people to become a patron of the arts.
Listen, I live on Patreon. That's how I make my living. I have a number of very generous and wonderful patrons who allow me to be a professional podcaster. Jack Conte and Pamplemousse, specifically Pamplemousse, was doing covers, right? Not original music.
Yep.
Pamplemousse was most of their thing. What I know about them, they were doing covers. So when they say, "Oh, and we were getting no money out of the millions of views we were doing on those videos like 15 years ago," it's because the original creators of those pieces were getting the money.
Right.
I don't know if is that how it should work? Maybe not. But it's not like they weren't, there was no money being made and it went nowhere, or someone, YouTube took
specifically, I was talking about the thing that prompted him was he went on tour. Because for that reason, right? He said, "Oh, we're going to do a tour," and it ended up being really not a profitable tour, and that's when he said, "We've got to find a better way." I think it's we are absolutely also funded by our audience with our club. That's a very important part of our business.
Something that we're missing out, though, when you're talking about music, is the whole scaffolding and infrastructure that supports musicians. I'm talking about your studio engineers, your recording engineers, your mastering.
But you don't need that anymore.
Yeah,
you can do it yourself.
No, but that's
Little
the thing.
Nas X didn't have a studio engineer,
But now a
recording
musician
engineer.
is expected to have every single skill, from marketing to mastering to make. Now the musician's supposed to do all of that stuff
that's
themselves.
Every
That's not the
creator, every
YouTubers.
artist,
No, exactly,
everything.
but it's not, it hasn't always been this way. This
It's
is brand
easier than it
new.
used to be
Now,
to
now
be
the artist
a
has to
jack
do
of all
literally
trades.
everything. You have to do
But it's
everything.
a lot easier to do that. And AI makes even the marketing part easier. Hey, we're going to take
But
a
not
break.
all
This is a
artists
great-
can do everything. Some artists can really just
No,
make
that's
music,
true.
you know? Some
Right.
artists can't do all that stuff.
You know what? I'm learning to play the piano. No one will ever pay me to play the piano. Ever. I promise you. Does that stop me from learning? No, I'm loving it.
But that's
right?
also the problem, is that like people will do it for free so that, you know, people will take advantage of that.
Yeah,
very
because
fact.
people love to make music or paint or take pictures. I don't make any money on my photography, but it's one of the joys of my life. You know, the
But
pay
there
for
is
me
this-
is when somebody says, "Hey, I like your picture on Flickr."
There is a societal question there. Do we need people to be motivated to make music professionally and seriously?
I think not.
Yeah.
Well,
and
Well, then we're going to the
I might say
we're going
yes
to
on
the
that.
we're going to the capitalism question here, and do we really
know-
want to go there?
and you know,
Well, it's a question about AI as well. If AI does, do we need universal basic income?
do you guys remember that
That's-
iPad commercial last year that Apple caught a lot of
They
flack for?
crushed the creatives,
Right.
And then
Well,
out of it came an iPad.
yes. So okay, like a terrible ad, like
Got everybody
like a
upset.
lampooned for obvious reasons, but
Yes.
just to affirm kind of Patrick's point and maybe the broader point of this conversation, maybe we don't need commercial music in the same way that we did, and there are potentially millions more people making music right now that we just don't know about, or we know about them, but they're in a playlist or
Every time I
Spotify.
see a street busker and I walk by and I go, God, that guy's great. It
Yeah.
reminds me that there are millions of brilliant musicians we've never heard of and will never
Yeah.
hear of, who probably won't even make a living, but they exist. And that's
and
because
are
we're
enabled
human.
by an iPad. Like I played the viola growing up. We didn't have a lot of money, but I had enough money to play the viola, but a lot of people don't. And I think maybe if you put a cheap tablet in their hand, a lot of people will be able to make music.
I agree. Hey, we got to take a break. I have an AI tool that I think we can all agree is a very bad idea coming up in just a second. This is This Week in Tech with some very smart philosophers. Patrick Beja, it's always a pleasure having you on from France. He's notpatrick.com, does a bunch of podcasts. You brought back the English language one, the Phileas Club.
Yeah, the Phileas Club. It's really fun. We send audio letters to Phileas from different parts of the world and tell
Who's
him.
Phileas?
Well, that's all of us, Leo. Phileas is all of us.
Listen and find out. How about
Exactly.
that? Notpatrick.com or on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. You should really be Not Phileas.
Well, I do a lot of shows, not just letters to Phileas. So.
Okay. Thank you, Patrick. Also with us, Daniel Rubino, editor-in-chief of Windows Central, a great place to go to get your Windows news and to keep up on what's going on with Microsoft in general. Anything particular you'd like to plug, Daniel, before we go into our ad?
No.
You should always
We
come
do a
here.
podcast.
When are you? When's your novel coming out? You should always come here with something.
I know someday I'll write a book, but yeah, I'm not.
Do you
there
have a
yet.
novel in your desk drawer?
I wouldn't do a novel. I would do a book on philosophy.
Oh, an anarchist's handbook, perhaps.
Yes. I've been trying to synthesize Taoism and anarchism for a long time, and eventually I'll write that book.
I am a devoted Taoist. In fact, I do Tai Chi every day, and I have a Tao Te Ching verse of the day that I put in my diary every day. I love it. Because it's nothing. It's a very easy philosophy to follow. If you try too hard, you're not doing it right.
It's the only philosophy you can read too, and you feel pretty good about yourself.
Yeah, I love it. True goodness is like water, right? Water is good for everything. It doesn't compete. It goes right to the low, loathsome places, and so finds the way, right? Good. I want to see Taoism and anarchy together at last. You got to write that book. I'm looking forward to it. Until then, everybody go to windowscentral.com and read up on all the latest. Also with us, Dan Patterson, whose work at Blackbird AI is really valuable, really important, helping debunk misinformation, getting the context people need about the stories they read. And it's free for all at compass.blackbird.ai. Did I say that right?
Yeah. That's just one of our context checking or deepfake checking products that you can look at. I still freelance for Jason Heiner at ZDNet. All that. Like, I'll never not freelance.
You're always once a journalist, always a journalist.
Yeah, and
would you like to do a reading from the Beasties Boys book while you're here?
That is a fantastic book, but let me tell you, the audiobook for the Beastie Boy book is fantastic. It is like listening to the streets of New York City in the 1980s. It's so good. That's what I want to plug. Listen to the audiobook for the Beastie Boys book.
Oh my God. All right. I'm putting it on my wish list right now. Not on Audible because I don't want to support Amazon anymore. I do all my books now from Libro.fm because it supports my local bookstore. Let me just see if it has the Beastie Boys book by Adam Horowitz. That one, is that it? Let's see here. Is this it?
Yeah.
With pizza on the front cover?
That is a good book.
All right. I'm going to add it to my cart right there. Look at that. Will I enjoy it even if I don't understand the street?
If you like Beastie Boys.
You remember, I'm an
City.
Old man.
Too.
I mean, those are two of the actual Beastie Boys who wrote that book. So, yeah.
Yeah.
It's written by the Beastie Boys?
Yeah, the actual book is great too because it's a massive coffee table book with beautiful photographs. It's just tremendous.
We all have different types of friends, right? There's the one that's kind of an asshole, but fun to be around once in a while.
Me. I already recognize myself in the book, the Beasties Boys book. All right. That's a good plug. Thank you. This episode of This Week in Tech brought to you by our friends at OutSystems, the leading AI-powered application and agent development platform. This is a fascinating story. OutSystems has been around for more than 20 years. And for that whole time, the mission of OutSystems has been to give every company the power to innovate through software. But imagine how their mission has evolved in the time of AI. You know, traditionally, IT teams have had two choices. Any company has had two choices when it comes to software. The build versus buy conundrum, right? You can buy off-the-shelf SaaS products. You know, you get it today, but you lose flexibility and differentiation. Or build it yourself, which, as I know from deep experience, costs a lot of money, takes a lot of time, and doesn't always give you the result you want. Well, there's now a new way. Besides build and buy, AI forges the way for another path, the fusion of AI, low-code, and DevSecOps automation into a single development platform. That's OutSystems. Your team will build custom applications with AI agents, and it's as easy as buying generic off-the-shelf sameware. Plus, which is great, with OutSystems, flexibility, security, and scalability come standard. With AI-powered low-code, teams can build custom future-proof applications at the speed of buying. With fully automated architecture, security, integrations, data flows, and permissions. OutSystems is the last platform you need to buy because you can use it to build anything and customize and extend your core systems too. Build your future with OutSystems. Visit outsystems.com/twit to learn more. That's outsystems.com/twit. We thank him so much for supporting This Week in Tech. I think we can agree facial recognition, while it has some use, probably should not be in the hands of ICE. This is from 404 Media. They are breaking so many. They are so good these days. Joseph Cox. The new tool, it's called Mobile Fortify. You might not know this, Patrick, but every time we exit or enter the U.S., Customs and Border Patrol takes a picture of us. In fact, I even think it says we don't save the picture, but they do. And according to internal ICE emails viewed by 404 Media, they're using those photos, plus others, I would imagine, to put an app on ICE's phone that they are now using. They are going around taking pictures of people to see if they're illegal, undocumented, I should say, undocumented immigrants. They call them illegal. Now, one of the things we know for sure is that face recognition is notoriously bad for false positives. If ICE is using that out in the field with a smartphone camera and then arresting people on the base of this is a nightmare, a privacy nightmare, a law enforcement nightmare, a really bad idea. You agree?
These also aren't the smartest people in the world who are using this technology.
No. They're frankly, I consider them Trump's Gestapo.
Yeah.
Face recognition technology. This is Nathan Fried Wessler, Deputy Director of the ACLU. Face recognition technology is notoriously unreliable, frequently generating false matches and resulting in a number of wrongful arrests across the country. We know this. Immigration agents relying on this technology to try to identify people on the street is a recipe for disaster. Congress has never authorized DHS to use face recognition technology in this way. The agency should shut this dangerous experiment down. Mobile Fortify, even the name is creepy.
And the absolute irony of that photo that's in that article of them taking pictures and they're wearing masks, it's like, come on, man.
Yeah. Oh, don't you dare take a picture of us. It's a very one-way street on this one. I guess there's nothing really much to say. This is an example of how AI can be used in a variety of ways, not always.
We were pondering what the potential issues would be with too much personal information being out there.
There's one right there.
In the case of U.S. Customs, it might be the same in the EU. I don't think so, but maybe. I've been to the U.S. a few times, of course.
And they took your picture?
Not only do they take pictures, and they take your fingerprints as well.
Yep.
And if I don't know if they use that database for that search, but the main issue, the way I understand it, is that not only do they take the picture, but if they end up arresting you, you're not allowed due process, correct?
Right.
So
you may end up in El Salvador or worse.
So if there is a false positive during
there's great hazard
picture taking,
yes,
right? If there is, like, this is a very real possible scenario. There's a false positive of someone who is not, the person that they identified, that gets sent somewhere without due process. What if they're wrong? Is there a way for that person to say, no, this is who I am. Ask my wife, do they go like that? This is the whole issue of where does it go down the line at some point?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, just thought you should know. I'm just saying, just asking the questions here.
And
what
just
else?
so you know, everyone outside the U.S. is shaking their head. This is not something that
I hope you don't blame us for this, though. I'm thinking, my wife does not want to travel outside the U.S. for a number of reasons. One, she doesn't want to have to come back in. But two, she's very much worried that people will not welcome Americans.
Well, I don't want to say that similar political movements haven't been seen outside the U.S., but I think we all understand that there is part of the country that is pushing this government and pushing for these policies. And I think we also don't want to discount the hardships that have led to embracing that kind of daring political agenda. But I don't know. This is a whole different conversation. But to answer your question very
Would you be nice to me if I came to visit?
I think most people understand that,
I hope so. Only 70 million
not
Americans,
all Americans
voted for this. Yeah. All right. All right. Moving away from politics. Meta this is a fascinating story going on between Meta and OpenAI. Mark Zuckerberg said that he's going around personally to the best people at OpenAI and offering them $100 million salaries plus $100 million signing bonuses to jump ship. And he says it's working. Sam Altman says, no, they haven't been offering that much. Or maybe it's the other way around. Actually, it is the other way around. Sam Altman's saying they're offering that much and they're not going. Adam Bosworth, CTO at Meta, says Sam's just being dishonest. He's suggesting we're doing this for every single person. Look, you guys, the market's hot. It's not that hot. Notice that's not a categorical denial. They are offering a lot to the right person, I think. And it may well be $100 million.
Well, they just poached 3 additional researchers. Siegler at Spyglass just said, well, maybe there's not 100 million signing bonus, but if you take everything into account, it might not be that far from the mark. And certainly, I don't know what got into Zuckerberg that he thought, the scientists at Meta weren't cutting it, and that Llama apparently is maybe not good enough, or I don't know.
There was even a rumor that they're abandoning Llama. I don't know if that's true either.
I would suspect that is a silly rumor. I would like to see that substantiated beyond.
So
like
this comes from Sam Altman talking on a podcast with his brother Jack.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah. Sam said they started making these giant offers to a lot of people on our team. This direct quote, like $100 million signing bonuses, more than that comp per year. And notice the Bosworth denial didn't say they're not doing that, only that they're not doing it for everyone.
I'm sorry, I thought you meant the other stuff, not that.
Oh, what other? Anyway,
that Meta might drop Llama.
Meta might drop. I don't know if that's.
I don't know that I've seen that substantiated anywhere. The other stuff, it was on a podcast. Sorry to
kind of amazing amount of money. I wish I'd studied whatever it is you have to study. The 3 scientists they acquired are all Chinese. I don't know if it's a great loss to OpenAI, although one OpenAI employee said it was.
I mean, it's starting to be. It's 3 now, but there were 2 more a week ago, right? I mean, it's
if you're willing to write the big check, I guess you could. I mean, look, how would you? If somebody comes to you and says, "I'll give you $100 million now, and $100 million a year,"
even if it's $100 million in a year, I think you think about.
No,
it, right?
They're saying no. This is what Altman says: $100 million signing bonus plus more than $100 million a year compensation.
Yeah, which I'm not sure I trust him about this, but maybe
Mark could afford it.
Yeah, and that's the issue. That's the incumbent, or the fact that they have such a huge, budget.
And by the way, Daryl's in our YouTube chat pointing out that Meta has more Blackwell H100 GPUs than any other company. I think it was 100. I can't remember what number it was. It was a huge number. So they have.
So here's my theory. Jan LeCun, who's I believe he's the chief AI scientist at Meta, right?
I think you're right.
Or at least he's very high up there. He's still working there. I was checking now. It was like, is he gone? Why is why is Zuck going on a buying spree for AI scientists? I think he's done with LLMs. He's hinted more than once that LLMs are good, but you're not going to achieve AGI with LLMs. And there are other avenues that they're exploring now. And I think he's like, LLMs are crap. For AGI, we need to go another route. So we're pushing in that direction. And Zuckerberg had a meeting 3 weeks ago with LeCun, and LeCun was like, well, I'm not doing that anymore. And so Zuck was like, okay, do your thing.
What do you need? He said, Jan, what do you need?
No, I think he said we still need people to work on LLMs. So let's go hire
You
them.
do your thing, Jan. We'll do ours.
That's my theory.
So Wall Street Journal says it's known as the list, and it's a secret file of AI geniuses. Only a select few researchers have the skills for the hottest area in tech. Mark Zuckerberg and his rivals want to hire them, even if it takes pay packages of more than $100 million.
I'm so done with tech bros. The list? Really?
The list. PhDs from elite schools like Berkeley and Carnegie Mellon. Experience at OpenAI, Google's DeepMind. They're usually in their 20s and 30s. They all know each other. This is the Journal. And they all spend their days staring at screens. Wow. I just feel like I made a big mistake when I chose to be a podcaster instead of an AI scientist. I know Common Lisp. One recruit who has spoken with Zuckerberg, who is personally counting his dream team of potential hires, describes the company's goal as nothing less than a transfusion from the company's top AI labs. It's a new lab at Meta devoted to superintelligence.
I mean, that's the game, right? It's capitalism. We were talking about it a little bit earlier. There is no reason he couldn't go around and offer 100 million signing bonuses, right? And I believe that OpenAI, at least, maybe not the other companies, but OpenAI has a lot of money in the bank as well. Maybe not enough to offer that kind of
by the way,
compensation.
You might be right about Jan LeCun, because the leader of the superintelligence team is a guy named Alexander Wang. He's 28 years old, grew up in New Mexico.
Oh, that's the Scale AI dude.
Look at this guy. Look at him. He's a kid.
He's a really interesting guy. He
got bought out. Meta bought $14 billion for a stake in Scale AI. So in effect, you could say $14 billion for this guy.
Because he knows everyone. And he is a very well connected in Silicon Valley and political circles. I think this is more about his connections. And maybe then he's the guy who can, call people to tell them about the 100 million signing bonus.
Well, at least one of the hires said, yes, we will be joining Meta. No, we did not get $100 million sign on. This is Lucas Spire posting on X. So you got 99 million. Big deal.
I mean, even if he got 10 million in equity, right? At that point, it becomes abstract. So I'm sure the point is Zuckerberg is going around trying to poach AI scientists. As I have very little love for him, but as is his absolute right.
He's trying to build a superintelligence team, according to the Journal, of roughly 50 people. Zuckerberg's in a group chat with two Meta executives called Recruiting Party. And there's an emoji with a party hat in which they discuss hundreds of potential candidates and tactics for approaching them, whether they prefer to be contacted by email, text, or WhatsApp.
You know what's funny about this story? It's like, I feel like when we watch Hollywood movies, this is like the opposite story. Like the real story should be, there should be a list of the top AI scientists, and someone wants them all dead.
Yes, that makes more sense. Which is worse, being hired by Meta or being murdered?
Yeah, like that would be like the real espionage. Like, oh my God, that's a story. But it's just like, oh, a bunch of kids getting hired for billions of dollars. It's like, okay.
I mean, we're getting the social network too, right?
Yeah.
We're getting the social network too.
This may explain that rumor, Dan, though, because he's building this superintelligence team separate from the Llama team. So that's probably where the rumor came from.
I'm just saying I want more sources.
Thing is, Mark is very fickle. Like 2 years ago, it was all about the metaverse. He even changed the company name.
I don't think that's being fickle. I think he saw something that he wanted the company to stand for and some kind of goal, and he believed that it could be achieved. And honestly, I think that that is still something really interesting and worth pursuing. Maybe it's 10 or 20 or 50 years down the line, it will be possible to make concrete. but it's still very interesting, the metaverse stuff. I don't poo-poo it as much as some of my friends and colleagues, but he saw what was happening with AI, and instead of going, oh, no, our thing is the metaverse, he very intelligently went, holy crap. Oh, sorry. Can I say that?
Yeah, you can say crap. Yeah.
Okay. And he was like, it was a holy part I was wondering about.
I don't know about holy. Father Robert's in the chat room. Wanted to ask him about that one.
And he was like, oh, we need to get on that. And I mean, to be fair, they were very much on it already, but they amped up the effort.
Oh, they're spending some money now.
I wouldn't call it fickle. I think he astutely, or it was pretty obvious, thought we can't slack on this, so let's go full hog on it.
Yeah.
The thing with the metaverse, is that it kind of exists already. It's just not Facebook's. It's called Minecraft.
Microsoft. Yeah.
No, that's not the metaverse.
Microsoft has a metaverse?
Yeah, that's not the one that he envisioned, but
What's Microsoft's metaverse?
Microsoft paid $70 billion for
Minecraft?
For a bunch of...
Do you know what's in there? Do you know what's in Minecraft? You know how much has been built in Minecraft? Like, there are museums in there. There are museums in there. There are concert venues
I would say
in there.
Roblox has given Minecraft a run for its money.
Yeah, video games, man. Like Second Life and World of Warcraft. You can't tell me 20 years ago people weren't living in World of Warcraft.
Exactly.
They're
all this
still
already
living
exists.
in a metaverse.
It's just not metaverse.
Very much.
Like
I was very much living in World of Warcraft. That's not.
We haven't heard from Uncle Joe in 12 years. He's been living in World of Warcraft.
Look, a lot of the reporting that came out in 2021 and 22, which was when they launched the big metaverse project, was that Meta at the time, which was called Facebook, had a big brand problem. They had a brand problem because
nobody
not
likes
just
Facebook.
The Blue app was well. Although we may think of that derisively, the real reporting at the time, this was Bloomberg, the Wall Street Journal, some us and others, but the reporting was that we don't really think of ourselves as Facebook anymore. We think of ourselves as a conglomeration of apps. And what they tried to do is obviously we know that the metaverse was a silly wool over your eyes thing that like the way this was pitched. I reported on this all day long. This was a silly thing. They knew this was silly. It was a video game in a VR headset. They had no intention of their sci-fi. They had no intention. Nobody there had any intention on that sci-fi future. What they saw is VR is an emerging market. We can invest in this and perhaps this will pay off. But what we really need to do is spend a lot of money to change our brand. Sorry for the rant, but like that's what the reporting was at the time.
That makes a lot of sense.
Well, that might be the case, but I would like to push back on the idea that the metaverse is just a silly thing and that World of Warcraft and Minecraft are the metaverse. What the metaverse could be
my point is that people are already spending time in a simulated reality, and that isn't really what Meta or Facebook was selling at the time. That's my only point.
Sure. I mean, we've had virtual worlds for a long time, but people equate that with the metaverse and they say, Minecraft or Fortnite or whatever. But the vision that he was pushing, maybe disingenuously, is photorealistic simulated environments.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. It was disingenuous, and that they knew it was disingenuous. Maybe
that's a lot of money. $10 billion to spend on that a year.
I'm just telling you what my sources in the company told me as the side, and that other companies reported. I don't know what's in Mark's heart. I don't. But I know.
Tell me this.
No one even knows if he has a heart. Dan,
what if you can indeed create an ecosystem where you can have photorealistic environment depicted and photorealistic you shown to other people in real time, essentially what you get is presence, right? The feeling of presence anywhere.
Actually, Vision Pro has really improved that with the latest version. Those 3D pictures of people are actually much more realistic. I've heard from a number of people, including Jason Snell on MacBreak Weekly, that you forget you're in a virtual environment. You actually think you're hanging out with people.
And I think that's the thing. As much as like smartphones made information ubiquitous, you could get information from anywhere. If you manage to create a photorealistic environment and maybe even make it a replica of an existing environment and maybe even in real time, then you do for information, you do for presence what you did for information.
Yeah, that's
and
the pitch they were giving in 2021.
Yeah.
That's fine. But like the reality is that we don't have that, and we didn't have that. And we didn't have the ability to get anywhere close to that. And Apple showed that with the best hardware. All I'm saying is I'm not saying that's not a compelling vision and that it could have happened. It might still happen. But the reality, the facts on the ground don't support that.
And what they were doing was something a little more surreptitious.
Fantastic.
By the way,
they were selling. Yeah.
Credit to Ben Cohen, Burbridgen, and Megan Bobrovsky at the Wall Street Journal, because obviously they did some good reporting on The List. We're going to take a break and come back in just a little bit. Last break of the show. Final thoughts with a very deeply philosophical crew this week. I like you guys. It's nice to have an anarchist, a Taoist, all in one person. Daniel Rubino, Dan Patterson, got two Dans, and a Patrick Beja. Good to have all three of you. Our show today brought to you by ExpressVPN. I just saw a study where third-party, I think it was Pete Marwick, audited all of ExpressVPN's technologies and said, absolutely, they do no logging. Look, ExpressVPN is more than a sponsor to me. It's the VPN I recommend. It's the VPN I use. Going online without ExpressVPN would be like, I don't know, driving without car insurance. You know, you might be a great driver, but with all the crazy people on the road these days, why would you take that risk? Look, everyone needs ExpressVPN. Every time you connect to an unencrypted network in a cafe, a hotel, an airport, your online data is not secure. Any hacker on the same network can gain access to and steal your personal data. It doesn't take much technical knowledge to hack somebody like that. Just some cheap hardware is needed. A smart 12-year-old could do it. And they're motivated to. Your data is valuable. Hackers can make up to $1,000 per person selling personal info on the dark web. ExpressVPN stops hackers from stealing your data by creating a secure encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet. And the VPN you use, the choice you make, is super important. You need to trust ExpressVPN. I love ExpressVPN, and they go the extra mile to make sure your data is absolutely invisible. We know that now thanks to the recent audit. ExpressVPN is the best VPN because it's super secure. It would take a hacker with a supercomputer over 1 billion years to get past ExpressVPN's encryption. It's easy to use. You fire up the app, you click one button, you get protected. It works on all your devices, phones, laptops, tablets, even your routers. So you can stay secure on the go and everywhere in your house. Rated #1 by the top tech reviewers at CNET and The Verge. In fact, when I travel, I use it. Catch a football game or my shows, or just, keep me secure. Secure your online data today by visiting expressvpn.com/twit. That's expressvpn.com/twit to find out how you can get up to 4 extra months free when you buy a 2-year package. expressvpn.com/twit. We thank them so much for their support of This Week in Tech. Don't forget that address. Use it so they know you saw it here. expressvpn.com/twit. Let's see. Oh, good news. If you are worried about privacy, Android phones will soon be able to warn you about Stingrays. Those are phony cell sites that we know are set up. In fact, Washington, D.C. is loaded with Stingrays so that foreign governments, United States law enforcement, and others can snoop on your cell phone. They trick your phone into joining the network. They then pass the traffic on, so you don't know you're not on a actual cell site, but they get to see everything you do. Law enforcement, according to Ars Technica, Ryan Whitman writing, has massively expanded the use of Stingray devices because cell phones, right? That's the key. So apparently Android is in position now of being able to identify a Stingray while you're using it and warn you about it. Here's the pop-up you might see. Mobile network security connected to unencrypted networks. They even will tell you the name of the SIM. So you know the person who's involved in this story, Dan? Was that what you were saying?
Oh, the metaverse story.
Oh, the metaverse story. Sorry.
Oh, no. Sorry. I was just posting, like, here was a package we produced about the metaverse back then.
Oh, cool. All right.
Yeah. No, this Stingray story is fascinating, and DC is loaded with it. I assume Lower Manhattan is too.
I think every major metro probably.
When I was in Ukraine, it was 2017, right? As like when Russia launched the NotPetya virus, and like I landed in the airport, and like my phone started overheating. My iPhone just started going nuts. I'm like, how many networks is this connecting to? Oh,
shit. Look at this. This is a Stingray device made by the Harris Corporation. Is that you just buy it off the shelf?
Awesome. Put this with your Wi-Fi.
Unfortunately, the phone has to have version 3 of Google's iRadio hardware abstraction layer. The Pixel phones do not support it yet.
Of course.
So, but look, maybe this would be, if you're worried about it, a thing to look for. Phones that launch on Android 16 later this year, like the Pixel 10, will be the first to do this. Apparently,
that's a great feature.
Yeah, no kidding. Thank you, Google. Google's position is only we should be allowed to spy on you.
I was going to say, that's exactly what I was going to say.
That's our job.
Only we get to spy on you. Screw the government.
Hey, good on France. Tesla has been ordered to stop deceptive practices on self-driving capabilities in France. You know that they just delivered this week a Model Y over 30 miles away without a driver. Elon says without even a driver assist. They just said, hey, Model Y, go to your new owner. And it did.
Yeah, that's a cute trick.
I'll be honest. I see videos of Waymos pulling into the wrong lane, of all sorts of crashes with these robo-taxis or just weird behavior. I feel like these companies are using us as beta testers and risking our lives unnecessarily.
Oh, I mean, I'll give Tesla credit for that in the sense that
bravo.
They were just like, it's going to take forever for the government to make rules around this and get this stuff going. So we're just going to go and do it now until someone tells us to stop.
Well, in fact, when Doge was in the government, I guess they still are, but one of the things Elon got was the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration to drop its investigations of self-driving vehicles.
I mean, if you look at a lot of early science, I used to do research, and we used to have to do the Institutional Review Board, the IRB, and all this kind of stuff. But the reason why that stuff exists is because there were scientists who didn't do those things.
Right.
And they would manipulate people, and they would do deceptive practices. But the science we got out of it, like the Stanley Milgram stuff, is like amazing data and research.
Stanley Milgram, the famous Stanford prison experiment, right? Is that what Milgram's was?
No. That was Milgram did the obedience to authority. Where
right.
Shoot the other person,
which you could not do anymore because of ethics.
No. But it was such like post World War II. That was such like insightful, critical research.
But we're lucky we have the research. Thank goodness he did it.
Right.
I feel bad for the people he subjected to this.
Right. But with the full self-driving stuff, full confession, I like screwing with people. So I was like, I told people I sold my Tesla a while ago because of Elon Musk, and they're like, "Yeah, right, go." And I'm like, "Yeah, I just bought a new Tesla instead."
Oh man, which one do you have?
I just bought the another Model 3, but it was the Highland reversion, which actually is a huge upgrade. Huge upgrade. Yeah, but it was the all-wheel drive one.
Do you have a bumper sticker that says,
No.
Okay.
I will not kowtow to that. I have seen a couple people, but in my area,
I've seen quite a few in our area anyway.
Yeah, surprisingly,
saying I bought this before Elon went crazy or things of that sort. Yes,
I feel that way. I just don't feel like I need to prove it to
you don't need to announce
it. Yeah, and so but the car came with 30 days of full self-driving, and I used it 0 times. Because a couple of reasons. One, I don't trust it.
Weren't you curious though? Weren't you tempted?
No, because the thing was, like, here's the other thing too. Say I tried it and I was like, "Whoa, this is amazing. This is game changing."
Then you'd want it.
I would want it, but one, I work from home, so I don't.
It's not gonna help you much.
Driving is not really a chore for me. 2, it costs $8,000. And it's like, no matter how good it was, I'm not paying $8,000 for it. So it's just like, I'm like, why even bother trying it when there's no way I'm going to want to have this.
I got a worse story because when I bought my Model X, I spent an extra $5,000 so it would be ready for FSD.
Oh yeah,
which it never got.
And they changed the hardware out.
Yeah,
now we're on hardware revision 4.
So I gave him $5,000 for nothing.
Yeah.
Oh well.
It's getting better. I think it'll be there someday. I'm just not going to be that guy that's going to. And I remember he was also like, oh, but someday you'll be able to, when you're not using it, you can have your car be a taxi. And
he's been promising that for 5 years.
I'm like, I don't care how much money I need. I don't want other people using my car.
That's what France is saying, Patrick, is...
No. That's the whole basis for the valuation of Tesla, right?
Oh,
that's the idea that at some point he's going to flip a switch and all of a sudden everyone's going to be making so much money from using their cars as taxis, which I guess might happen, but it's there was a video from Tesla of self-driving going through Paris and going through the Arc de Triomphe.
The Place de la Concorde roundabout?
The Place de l'Arc de Triomphe, yeah, which is...
The Arc de Triomphe, the craziest roundabout in the world.
By far. Oh, well, maybe not by far.
Is it the case? I think it's the case that in most roundabouts, the people in the roundabout have the right of way. On the Arc de Triomphe roundabout, the people entering have the right of way because otherwise you would never get in.
Yes, no one has the right of way.
No one has a right of way.
Chaos. But, the interesting thing, there are very few accidents on that roundabout. Everyone knows how crazy it is. But so the point is, every time
they actually sent a Tesla into that roundabout?
Yes. And it successfully traversed it. And so it's very symbolic because anytime anyone would say, well, there's self-driving here and that, and then French people and especially Parisians would go, oh, but wait until they come to the Place de l'Arc de Triomphe. That's the real test. And now it's been passed. Of course, we don't know, if they chose the time or if they tried 15 times and this one, it succeeded. But symbolically, it's impressive. And honestly, I'm impressed by self-driving, period. I think Tesla isn't there yet. And their first tests in like the 10 square meters of Austin where they are operating have been a little bit, hazardous. But Waymo is expanding every single week, it seems, and doing hundreds of thousands of rides per week.
They seem to have won this battle.
Yeah. And even more than that, they're showing that self-driving works. Not everywhere, maybe, but it's really the Gartner hype cycle. 10 years ago, we were like, oh, self-driving, it's happening, it's here. And then it wasn't here and everyone got tired and the hype fell down. But by the time the hype was at its lowest, meaning 3 years ago, the tech actually started working and, self-driving kind of works now. Maybe not everywhere, maybe not all the time, but the initial, studies show that the first stats show that it is a lot safer than you're showing a video and there are.
Is this giving you a cold sweat here? By the way, notice the driver, his hands are right next to the wheel. He is ready.
Of course, they have to do that just to show that he's ready to.
Yeah, to jump right in.
Yeah.
But that's what the France authorities, that's why they're going after Tesla, because Tesla's claiming autonomy when in fact a driver does have to be right there. That's not autonomous in the French authorities' point of view.
Yeah, it isn't. And it's not in anyone's point of view.
But people aren't apparently Tesla sales in the EU are plummeting, down 67%.
Yeah.
People
you still see a lot of them. There are enough that were sold before, but there is certainly there are people still buying them. I have a good friend, maybe I shouldn't say his name. He said it publicly that he bought a new Tesla, even though he didn't want to.
I think his name is Daniel Rubino. Is his name? I think.
Actually, it's Cédric Ingrand, which I think you.
Cédric! I know Cédric, of course.
Yeah, we do. So we do my tech show, my weekly tech show. He comes on every month, and he was like, I wanted to buy an electric car. again. And I looked at everything, and this was the only one that would tick all the boxes for a reasonable price. Things might have changed now. There are, the Chinese manufacturers which are coming in and very competitive. But at the time, maybe a year ago or 6 months ago, he bought it. He was like, that's my only reasonable option. So
that's exactly how I felt. It's I get the arguments, people not liking Elon and Tesla 100%. Not an issue. If someone tells me, I'm like, yes, I get it. But when I look at stuff from like Ford and Honda and everything else, and I'm just like, they're not exactly crushing
I've had a Mach-E. I liked my Mach-E. I have a BMW i5 right now. Lisa has a Mini Cooper electric, and our son has a Chevy Bolt. They're all very good. I don't think Tesla has the lock that it used to have.
Sure, that's true. I just like when it comes to design and execution and features and fun, that for me, the Tesla just still ticks all the boxes. And I've looked at other things, but I just nothing. And plus, it was just the pricing. The only reason I really went for it, I got a great trade in for my previous Tesla,
right? And
they had the 0% APR. It was just like, and plus, I had $11,000 in EV rebates, instant.
By the way, those are probably going away in the big, beautiful bill.
Yep, and that was another reason I wanted to jump on this before Dale went away, because it's like,
we'll watch with interest what goes that they're debating it right now. It'll probably go all night. A number of things in reconciliation in the Senate could change the way we work. For instance, the Senate version could force the FCC to sell off half the spectrum used by the 6 gigahertz Wi-Fi band, which currently is unregulated. The FCC might have to sell it to AT&T.
Oh, good.
We'll watch that with interest. There's also that moratorium on states passing AI restrictions for 10 years. The parliamentarian at first said it could stay in, then said it couldn't stay in. It's unclear what the status of that is. But as far as I know, it's still in the bill. They're debating that right now as we speak, and we'll probably be debating it all night long.
That is a completely crazy idea, right? The idea that you would ban states. Is it because then you don't have 50 different pieces of legislation you have to adhere to? Is that the problem? Or?
Yes, that's why all the AI companies support it, because they don't want a crazy quilt of regulations. But of course, that only makes sense if there's a federal law. And then there is the No Fakes Act, which the EFF says the No Fakes Act has changed, and it's so much worse. The bill, which says it targets the issue of misinformation and defamation from generative AI, No Fakes stands for the Nurture Originals, Foster Art, and Keep Entertainment Safe Act. However, it's basically a censorship structure. In fact, the president in his State of the Union speech says, I'm going to use that because no one's been treated worse on the internet than I have. The new version of the No Fakes Act requires almost every internet gatekeeper to create a system that will A, take down speech upon receipt of a notice, B, keep down any recurring incident, meaning adopt inevitably overbroad replica filters on top of the deeply flawed copyright filters, C, take down and filter tools that might have been used to make the image, any filter tools that might be used to make the image, and D, unmask the user who uploaded the material based nothing more than on the say-so of the person who alleges that it's a deep fake.
What does it mean to unmask the user? To the person accusing them, or
to the authorities?
Okay.
The problem is, so I run a Mastodon instance, and I would be, this law would affect me because I would have 48 hours upon being informed that is a deep fake. It's a revenge porn of me. I don't like it, to take it down. That's not enough time for me to verify it. So what's going to happen? It's going to immediately be taken down.
And for small businesses like you, you would be flooded with this. So it's just better to shut it down.
Yeah.
How does it work for things like CSAM and terrorism and things like that, which I guess has to be taken down very quickly as well, right?
Yeah.
Legally.
Yeah. This is sort of supposed to be the same thing, but I think is so broad and so draconian that it basically allows anyone to get a subpoena, and not just from a judge, but from a court clerk, and without any form of proof.
It seems very wide, just like we were talking about with the age verification on porn sites. The definition was so wide it became like very dangerous. Here also, it seems like it could be like Trump saying, I'm going to use that.
Congress already passed the bill, actually, that Trump said he was going to use, the Take It Down Act.
Oh, that's a different one. Okay.
This is even well, no, I've conflated them too because they sound similar. Anyway, we'll keep an eye on that one.
It's kind of like YouTube at scale, right? Like someone puts a DMCA claim against you, and it's just down.
Everywhere.
Yeah, it's just.
And if there's one thing we've learned from Content ID, I certainly have learned it, is don't even take a chance, because it's such a pain in the butt to fight it, and you're going to meanwhile be demonetized or even taken down, and it's a chilling effect.
Yeah. That I've experienced with Apple, which I know you talk about sometimes when they have an event on Twitch, and I got a strike on Twitch because I was commenting on.
We stopped putting it on Twitch and YouTube. We now do it in the club only.
Everyone that I know has gone to the same.
That's interesting.
Has done the same.
That's interesting.
Which I honestly think, I mean, maybe it's Apple's right, but I ended up actually contacting the lawyers, and I was imagining they would want me to sign my firstborn to them to remove it. They were very nice. They were like, yeah, we just want you to confirm that you will not use it to in the future to disparage Apple or whatever. I can't remember what the phrasing was, but it was very reasonable.
And you agreed to it, and removed. Are you going to continue to do it on Twitch?
So no, the thing is, I promised that I wouldn't do it in a way that was infringing on copyright, which was very wide. But of course, like you, I decided not to live comment on those shows.
That's right.
Which no one is doing anymore, which I would argue is allowing Apple to broadcast their message unimpeded.
Exactly the point.
There is no commenting. There is no context. There is no, you can, of course, comment it with just, without showing the image. That you can do, but people who want to watch it want to see what's being discussed.
Well, and here's the thing. That's such broad disparagement. If I say, gee, I really don't like iOS 26, is that disparagement?
No, but that's not even the issue. You can't show their produced copyrighted content, which is their presentation, which if you can't show it and comment on it at the same time, the only thing that's left is their unmodified
precisely that's the point
version, which is their message, their version of their marketing and what they want to say. When they say we have however many benefits to this and that, and we are very eco-friendly, and of course, you're going to see articles later.
This is the thing. In the U.S., what we were doing is protected as fair use.
In France, too.
But fair use is only the right to hire a lawyer. And you and I are not in the position to fight this in the court of law. So we just give up. Speaking of giving up, I think we've done more than enough here to disrupt the status quo. I want to thank you guys, our favorite anarchist, Daniel Rubino. I think we should do a whole show. Forget the book. Let's do a show on Taoism and anarchism.
Do it.
I can do
Together at last. I love it.
Need a couple beers, but that'll be a fun discussion.
Wu Wei meets Wu Tang. It'll be great. I can't wait. Daniel is the editor-in-chief at Windows Central. Always a pleasure to have you on, Daniel. Thank you. What's the game you're playing these days?
Oh, the joke is I have a Steam account and Xbox Game Pass. I have 200 games I'm not playing.
Yes, exactly. I have every game that I'm not playing.
Exactly.
I realized, I said I was starting to learn to play the piano. I thought every moment I spend playing Valheim or Elder Scrolls Online or whatever is a moment I'm not learning how to play the piano. So I decided to make an executive choice and learn the piano instead. It's great to have you, Daniel. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Patrick, thank you for staying up late with us. It is now Monday, and it is cooling off, I hope.
Well, my computer is very warm. So,
so is mine. It's 32 degrees up here. Yeah. So we're hoping that you get a little bit of a respite in
At some point, I'll open the window when we get offline.
All right.
We'll do a show one day, and I will explain to you all the ways that France is protecting the music industry and subsidizing music production and artists. And
are they really?
Oh yeah. Oh,
that's wonderful.
So.
Most every other country has like a vibrant arts thing in their government. It's just America that doesn't.
At this point, we're defunding public broadcasting. We don't. But
America has no art programs.
One of the reasons we're doing this is that America is such a broad influence on cultures around the world that we have to subsidize it. But if you're a musician and you manage to get like 40 gigs a year, I think it's 40, something like that, then you will get essentially a diluted version of unemployment benefits for the next year to allow you to search for more gigs and keep going. It is very, and so I'm just trying to say I love music and I want it to be protected. I was just playing devil's advocate earlier in the show.
I love
That's
that.
all I'm saying.
Patrick hosts podcasts on tech and gaming at notpatrick.com, including Le Rendezvous Tech, Le Rendezvous Jeu, the Phileas Club, L'Actu Tech. And what game are you playing these days?
I finished a couple of weeks ago Expedition 33, and it is such a wonderful, modernized JRPG by a French team. It's one of the best games of the year. I think it's going to get Game of the Year. It's an incredible game.
It looks beautiful.
I recommend it. It's on Game Pass. Everything, and so. If you allow me just 2 seconds, this is an Unreal Engine 5 game, which was made by 30 people, a core team of 30 people.
Wow.
Nowadays, you can make a game like this because we have the tools and the productivity increases that those tools and technology afford us. A few years, like this is AAA, huge budget level quality. And it's a good game on top of that. Like it's an amazing, amazing achievement. Expedition 33.
Microsoft says I'm too young to play it, unfortunately, but oh well, it is included with my Game Pass. Thank you, Patrick. And of course, Stan Patterson, I'm glad to hear that your health scare was just a scare and that you are alive and well and with us.
Yeah.
It's great to see you. Director of Content, Blackbird.ai. Everybody should sign up at compass.blackbird.ai and just get a little fact checking in your life, a little context.
Although as we're talking, I'm resubscribing to Game Pass Ultimate.
What game do you want to play, my friend?
I'm finishing up also Clair Obscura Expedition 33. Not just one of the best games of the year, one of the best games I've played. It is a type of video game that you give to people who are like, why do you play video games? Give them that game and they'll go, oh, geez. The story is tremendous. The mechanics are great. It's fun. It's heavy. It's easy to play, but it's very challenging and complex. Fantastic game.
Well, there you go. And by the way, according to Compass by Blackbird AI, Taylor Swift is not breaking up with Travis Kelce. So that's a relief. That's a relief. I'm going to go download this game now. You got Expedition 33. You got me.
It's on Game Pass.
Yeah, that's right. I don't have to do anything. I just play it. Nice. It's right over there. My Xbox is right over there.
Hey, Patrick, what was your runtime?
I'm not sure I want to say because there are things happening at the end that you might
spend time with.
How far along are you?
I'm about halfway through. I'm far into the second act. Okay.
30 hours, I would say. 30.
Yeah, okay.
This is the tip I'll give you and everyone listening.
I'm just over 20.
Very important. Once you are kind of reaching the end, and you can feel you are, don't dilly-dally around. Don't go making lots of quests because you're going to out-level the last encounters and it's not going to be as fun. So you can do that after. Just
interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting.
It's
Don't get too good is what you're saying. If you want the
Yes.
challenge.
in true JRPG fashion, you will outlevel the encounter and it will be trivial. And it is so intense, and the way the storytelling integrates into the actual fighting action is incredible. So if it's not as intense when you're doing it, you're not experiencing the full breadth of what the game is intending to do.
Awesome.
And it's so original with like this Belle Epoque French aesthetic, and I could talk about it for hours. It's really good.
I can't wait. I'm going to play it right now. Thank you so much.
Play in story mode. Play in story mode.
Mode.
It's too
Okay.
difficult if you don't play in story mode. Just crank
Yeah.
down the difficulty one notch.
I agree.
And you'll love it.
Yeah. Very cool. Patrick, Daniel, Dan, great to have all three of you. Thanks to all of you for joining us. And of course, a special thanks to the members of Club TWiT who keep this artist and all the artists who work on our shows employed. 25% of our operating income now from you, Club TWiT members. It's one of the ways we could stream on 8 different platforms: the Club TWiT Discord, YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, X.com, Facebook, LinkedIn. But it's also what allows us to do all the interesting stuff we do in the club, like our music special that we did on Friday. That's a club special. We stream it live for everybody, but then it is saved on the Club TWiT feed for just TWiT Club members for a month. Then we put it out in public. That's true of many of the things we do in the club. But honestly, the reason to join the club is not the Discord, not the ad-free versions of all the shows, but because if you like what we do, it's a way of kind of almost voting and saying, keep doing what you're doing. Find out more at twit.tv/clubtwit. Whether you're a member or not, do subscribe to our newsletter, twit.tv/newsletter. You'll keep up on everything coming up on all of our shows. It's a good way to do that. Thank you all for being here. You can, if you're not watching the show live, every Sunday, 2 to 5 p.m. Pacific, 5 to 8 Eastern, 2100 UTC. You can also download it. It's on our website, twit.tv. There's a YouTube channel dedicated to This Week in Tech. And of course, you can subscribe in your favorite podcast player. And that way get it automatically, audio or video or both, the minute we're done. I do recommend that you give us a nice review because that helps spread the word. Apple just did a feature thing on 20 years of podcasting and all the amazing podcasts, some of which have lasted 20 years, and didn't even mention this. That's why the reviews are so important, because discovery is difficult in this world, and we think everybody should be listening to TWiT. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time. As I said, for now more than 20 years. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. Another TWiT is in the can.
Amazing.